What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto got the queen of the underworld pregnant? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description box to original creator of this beautiful creation. Thousands of years ago there were three supernatural factions that waged wars against each other. This war came to be known as the Great War. There were the angels, the fallen angels, and the devils. These angels were powerful beings. They had the look similar of humans, except they donned white halos above their head and white wings. They were servants of God, who not only served under him but were led by him in this war, as they were enemies of both the devils and fallen angels. There were then the fallen angels. These angels, unlike their angel counterparts, had black-colored wings and no halos, being that they were angels who had fallen from God's grace due to the impure thoughts that had diverted them from the book of God. These fallen angels were led by a man named Azazel, who formed a group named Grigori, which governed most of the fallen angels. Those within this group were mainly those who had fell with Azazel. Their enemies were both the angels and devils. The last faction were the devils. The devils had the exact appearance of humans. Unlike the other two factions who had regular wings, the devils had black bat-type wings. The devils were led by a group named the Four Great Satans. These were powerful beings who controlled the underworld and maintained order. All three factions were powerful nonetheless. The conflict that started this battle between the three were unknown, but still war waged between the three groups regardless. It wasn't until enough blood from both sides were stained that eventually led them to stop fighting between each other. The first to pull out of the war were the fallen angels, mainly the Grigori. Azazel ordered this as he saw he had lost most of his forces but not their leaders. It wasn't until both the angels and devils suffered major losses on both sides that ultimately decided the war had to stop. The losses included the death of God on the angels' side, and the death of the original Four Great Satans on the devils. This finally had caused them both to stop fighting with each other, seeing how there was no point in continuing. This end of the war resulted in an unofficial peace between the three factions. Although there were no official peace between the three, battles between them did occur, but not to that degree. Regardless of what had happened, a boy was about to be discovered that would change the state between the three factions entirely. Japan. The sky was dark while the moon shined brightly. Stars had illuminated the night sky, adding a beautiful picture of what nighttime on Earth should really look like. In the midst of the beautiful scenery, heavy breathing and heavy footsteps could be heard. At around this time, a little girl could be seen shuffling from building to building. She seemed to be hiding in fright. She quickly ran to another building, hiding behind it as she peered from the wall she was leaning on. She had slightly long black hair that reached past her shoulders. She had violet eyes and wore a casual dark blue kimono with plain sandals. I knew I shouldn't have healed him, the little girl thought. Seeing how no one was around, she stepped out quietly and began to look from side to side. Okay, the exit is right there, she thought. She took a deep breath as she began to run towards the exit. As she was about to reach it, she felt a presence behind her that made her freeze. Akeno Himejima, I finally found you, a deep voice said. The little girl named Akeno turned around in fear as she saw what she was trying to hiding from. It was a man with short brown hair who was wearing a long black robe with a long type scarf around his neck that had two crosses on the ends of both sides. The people behind him were wearing clothing in a similar fashion. What do you want from me? The girl yelled as she began to tear up as she recognized who it was. The man smirked. The Himejima clan wants you eliminated due to your abomination of blood. The man said. Akeno's eyes widened as she saw the man step forward. He reached into his robe and produced a hilt. It was then a yellow light erupted from it, forming a sword. Now die, he yelled as he charged at Akeno. Akeno, who was frozen in shock, could only close her eyes, waiting her inevitable death. No, a voice yelled that caught both of their attention. Akeno caught a glimpse of a yellow blur come at her as she then fell to the ground. It seemed the blur tackled her. Akeno slowly opened her eyes to see a kid her age and height with blonde hair and blue eyes. Are you okay? He asked softly. Akeno only blinked. Baka, what are you doing? She yelled at him. The boy stood as he helped her up and scratched his head. Well, I saw you were in trouble, the boy said. Don't you know he's a priest? Now we're both going to die, she yelled as she looked at the man from her clan. The boy looked towards the man as his eyes narrowed. I know, but I couldn't stand to see someone like you die like this. So I decided I will protect you," he said confidently. Akeno gasped at what she heard as she stood there looking at the back of the boy's head. She could see that he must have been relatively the same age as her. The priest sneered as he looked at the little blonde boy. "You insolent little boy, you reek of devil blood. I was planning on only killing the girl. But now you will too. You will die by the Lord's name, you demon," the priest said as he readied his sword and lunged forward. The blonde boy took a deep breath as he looked at the man. Closing his eyes, he opened them, revealing two purple eyes with multiple black rings around his pupil. The priest raised his blade up in the air and began to swing down. Naruto merely held up his palm. Shinra Tensei, heavenly subjugation of the omnipresent god. The boy muttered as the man and his sword instantly flew back a few feet, hitting the ground. Akeno and the priest who before was hit went wide-eyed. 10 seconds, the boy thought as he lunged forward, seeing the guy quickly get up with a shocked expression. This caught the priest off guard as the boy neared him and punched him in the face, making him stumble back a bit. The man grunted as he wiped the slight blood from his mouth. "You little brat, you're going to get it now," he yelled as he lunged forward with his sword. The blonde boy's eyes widened as saw the man lunge at him. The man swung his sword at the blonde, but he just nearly dodged it as he only focused his attention on that oncoming attack. What the boy didn't see was the follow-up as a leg came out of nowhere and nailed him in the ribs. The blonde grunted as he got sent back, tumbling on the ground. With Akeno could only watch, frozen in place as boy she didn't even know fight for her life. She wanted to do something, but she was too afraid. "Please stop," Akeno said as she watched the boy get cut and hit again by the man that was hunting her. "Stop please," she yelled to them. Her pleas were unheard as she saw the boy get back up. She watched as the priest glared at the boy who seemed to continue to get up and fight. "Why are you even fighting for her? You barely know her and you're a devil. And if you did know her, you wouldn't want to as she has tainted blood," the man said. Akeno's head lowered in shame at what he said. That very reason was why she was running. But what she heard next made her shoot her head back up. The blonde boy spit some blood out of his mouth and smirked. "I don't care who or what she is. What I do know is I will not let you lay a hand on her," the blonde yelled back. Akeno gasped as she put a hand on her mouth. Normal POV. The blonde was aching all over his body as he was being tossed around. The hits and cuts he was receiving was starting to affect him. "Damn it. Alright, 10 seconds have passed, but I'm running low on energy. I need to pour everything into one shot. It's my only chance," the blonde thought as he stood up. The priest sneered as he saw the boy get up. "Why are you even fighting for her? You barely know her and you're a devil. And if you did know her, you wouldn't want to as she has tainted blood," the man said. Naruto spit some blood out of his mouth and smirked. "I don't care who or what she is. What I do know is I will not let you lay a hand on her," Naruto yelled back. The priest only smirked. "Have it your way. I didn't want to do this, but now I'm going to enjoy beating a demon like you to a bloody pulp," the man said as he summoned another sword, but smaller than the previous. He charged forward again, this time intent on really killing him. Naruto closed his eyes as focused his breathing. He needed to calm down. He could feel him nearing. Taking a few more deep breaths, he opened his eyes to see the man descending down on him, intent on decapitating him so it would end. Holding his hand up again, he poured all of his power into the technique. "Shinra Tensei," he yelled as the repulsive force came from his hand, blasting the man away. "Ah!" he yelled as he was hit harder and flew back further this time. But Naruto's eyes widened. The priest in a last-ditch attempt throw one of the swords he had in his not towards him, but towards Akeno. "No!" he yelled as raced towards the girl who was only watching the battle. Akeno watched in surprised as he saw the boy blast the man back. She had never seen anyone do that, but to her surprise she saw the man throw his sword towards her. Akeno, who had been watching this, couldn't move. Why can't I move? Move, Akeno, she yelled inwardly. But a trembling caught her attention. Looking down she saw her hand trembling and it seemed it wouldn't stop. She knew that was she just too afraid to move. As the spear neared her, she caught a glimpse of the blonde hair boy again. "Damn it, why didn't you move?" he yelled as he grabbed her and turned around, the sword whizzing and impaling him in the back. "Ah!" the boy yelled as he spit out blood. The boy slumped against her, his breathing rigid. Akeno had finally snapped out of it and quickly took the sword out of his back, making him yell as then threw it away. She made space between them as she held his face in her hands. She saw a smile on his face for some reason as his Rinnegan deactivated. Why do you keep doing this? Please stop, you're only going to get hurt more. Akeno said to him as tears were falling out. The blonde slightly chuckled as blood trickled down his mouth. Well, I thought you were pretty, the boy said with a smile. Akeno's tears stopped momentarily as she could only look at him in confusion. That's not a reason to keep doing this, Yubaka. She yelled at him for such a simplistic answer. The boy only kept his smile. I saw what you did for that human. I thought you and your abilities were amazing. Which is why I decided to follow you, he said as he coughed. I was going to talk to you, but I got nervous and decided to follow you. I guess now would be a good time to introduce ourselves to each other. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, the boy said as he coughed again. For the first time in her life, Akeno blushed at what he said about her abilities. She had never thought anyone would like her due to her heritage. But here was this boy that wanted to get to know her. But not only that, he called her pretty, something she didn't hear from boys often. Akeno for the first time in a long time smiled. I'm Akeno Himejima, she said softly. Naruto smiled. Nice to meet you, Akeno-chan, Naruto said as he slowly closed his eyes, letting sleep take over him. Although before he could close his eyes, he saw a glimpse of hair that was strikingly red in color. Before Akeno could do anything else, their moment was interrupted. Now I will finish both of you off, a voice said. Akeno looked over Naruto's shoulder to see the priest Naruto was fighting standing a few feet from them, as he was now accompanied with the other priest he came with. Akeno's eyes suddenly grew fierce. I will not let you hurt Naruto-kun, she yelled as she hugged Naruto tighter. The priest smirked as he and the other priest he came with also pulled out light swords. That will be quite enough, a man said, catching the attention of Akeno and the priests. Standing before them was a tall man that was dressed elegantly and wore what resembled a beret with straps on the side. Next to her was a girl who looked to be the same age as Naruto and Akeno. What stood out was her long crimson hair. She had one small strand that was sticking out along with bangs covering her forehead and small side bangs that framed her face. She had a light skin tone that was accompanied with light blue-green eyes. She looked to be wearing a nice-looking dress. But the priest instantly knew who she was once they spotted that crimson hair. That's Rias Gremory, Lord Gremory's daughter, the priest in the front shakily pointed out. You are correct. As for I am Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, Lord Gremory's bishop. You three are also within Gremory territory now, Heinrich said, making them all freeze. Shit, we're outmatched then, one priest said. Did you know we were in Gremory territory? Another one asked frantically. Before they could discuss anything further, Heinrich interrupted them. We did not come here to engage in this quarrel. Better yet, to stop it. I want to offer you gentlemen a deal, Heinrich says to them. And what would that be? The priest with brown hair said. You are here for this young girl, correct? Heinrich asked as the priests nodded. And you have confirmed her last name as Himejima. Am I correct? Heinrich said as they gave a second nod. Well, how about this? We will take the young Himejima out of your hands. And if you agree, she will stick to Rias-sama's side and will serve neuter the Gremory name and not the Himejima. Along with that, she will never enter territory that the Himejima clan owns. So what say you? Heinrich asked. The priest with the brown hair turned around and began to talk with the other priests he came with. After a few minutes, the man turned around and faced Heinrich. All right, we agree. Make sure she never enters any land owned by the Himejima, or we will kill her next time, the man said as the priest and the other priest he came with turned to leave. Heinrich and the now identified Rias made their way over to Akeno, who was still holding Naruto. Are you okay, little one? Heinrich asked the girl. Akeno turned her head to see the tall man offering a smile. She only nodded. Please help my friend. He was hurt badly, Akeno said worriedly. The man nodded. Of course, let me take him, Heinrich said. Akeno gently handed Naruto to the man, to which he got a hold of him, allowing Heinrich to fully carry him. This boy. I know Lord Gremory will be very surprised with this discovery, Heinrich thought. He then looked at Rias, who nodded. Rias looked over to Akeno and offered her a hand. I'm Rias Gremory. Would you like to come to the compound and get cleaned up? She asked with a smile. Akano slowly took the hand and smiled lightly as she nodded. Good, follow me, she said as she made her way next to Heinrich as a red circle appeared, engulfing them. In the underworld, the next day. Ow, my head. Yawn, where am I? Naruto said as he rose. Looking around, he saw that he was in a room. A very well-furnished room. Looking around, he saw he was sleeping on a relatively big and soft bed. There were also nice chairs and mirrors along with several paintings that hung around the room. All in all, it looked very expensive. As he went to move his arm, he felt a weight on it. Looking down, he saw a head with black hair. Looking closely, he saw the girl he was protecting yesterday lying her head on the bed next to him as she seemed to be sitting on a chair. Naruto saw her face and couldn't help but smile. He moved his other hand to her face to move away her bangs. This inadvertently caused her to open her eyes. Blinking a few times, blue eyes came into her vision. Naruto-kun, Akano yelled as she leapt from the chair to hug him. Naruto wasn't expecting it as he fell back onto the bed with Akano on top of him. Hey Akano-chan, Naruto said with a smile as he rose back up. Are you okay, Naruto-kun? How's your back feeling? Akano asked worriedly as she too sat up. Naruto chuckled as he patted her head, making her pout a bit. I'm feeling fine, Akano-chan. Never better, he replied as he continued to look around the room. Where are we, Akano-chan? Naruto asked as he looked at her. Akano, who backed away a bit, smiled. We are in the Gremory household, Akano said. Naruto's eyes slightly widened. Gremory? Wow, never thought I'd end up here, Naruto said with surprise. He then looked at Akano. How are you feeling, Akano-chan? He asked the young girl who only smiled at him. I'm doing fine, Naruto-kun. I never got a chance to thank you for saving me, she said with small blush. Naruto smiled. It was no problem. I'm just glad you're okay, he said softly. Akano could only smile at how much he cared for her considering they barely knew each other. Knock, knock, the sound resonating through the door alerting Naruto and Akano. Are you two awake? A male voice said on the other side. Yes, Naruto replied back. The door opened to reveal three people. One was a male. He was a very tall and handsome man who was wearing a very nice white suit. He had long crimson red hair and slight goatee and looked to be in his 40s. Next to him was a very beautiful woman. She had short brown hair and she sported an elegant yellow dress that was strained by her bust as she looked to be in her early 30s. The last person was in front of both of them. She was a young girl who had long crimson red hair, longer than the man she was standing next to. She had her arms crossed as she too was sporting a very stylish dress. Naruto on the other hand wasn't focusing on the two adults but the young girl in front of them. He had never seen such strikingly colored hair. Your hair, it's so beautiful, Naruto said without even knowing. The young girl's eyes widened as she blushed in front of him. No one had ever complimented her hair. Naruto was shook out of his thoughts as he heard a deep laugh. Not even a day and you're already charming these two young girls here. Your hunger is insatiable. The man laughed as Naruto and the two girls blushed. "Tu-san," the girl said as she face palmed while Akano looked away with a slight blush. Naruto was slightly blushing but laughed along. "Thank you for having me here," Naruto said as he lowered his head a bit in a bow. The man waved it off with a smile. "It's no problem, although I am very curious about you. Where are my manners? I am Lord Gremory, head of the Gremory clan. The woman next to me is my wife, Venelana, and the young girl in front of me is my daughter, Rias," he said. Naruto was very surprised as to who he was talking to. He didn't think he would met the head of the clan and his family so soon. "I am Naruto Uzumaki. Nice to meet you, Lord Gremory, Venelana-sama, Rias-sama," Naruto said as he bowed his head. Lord Gremory and Venelana's eyes slightly widened at the last time name but went back to normal. "Oh, just call us by our first names, Naruto. We would prefer it," Venelana said with a friendly smile. Naruto nodded with a smile as well. "Well, Naruto, do you mind if I ask you a few questions?" Lord Gremory said. Naruto nodded as the three closed the door and sat down in the chairs inside the room. Akano sitting in the chair next to him. "First of all, I would like to say that I am very impressed that you were able to hold off a priest of that level. Heinrich told me about the battle," he said with praise. Naruto scratched his head in embarrassment. "Thank you," he said with a slight laugh. "Now, what were you doing in the human world?" Lord Gremory asked, a bit suspicious. Naruto for a moment froze. I was sent there, he said softly as he looked down. Lord Gremory's expression changed as he saw the question he had asked made the young boy upset. Do not worry, Naruto, I'm not going to interrogate you. I was just curious since you were a very young devil to be in the human world alone. Lord Gremory said softly. Naruto scratched the back of his head sheepishly. You know about me being devil? He said. Lord Gremory nodded. You're a devil, Naruto-kun? Akaino asked timidly, to which Naruto only nodded. Naruto saw her expression. I hope that doesn't change anything between us. Naruto said frantically. Akaino saw this and jerked her head and began to shake it while putting her hands out. No, I was just surprised is all. We're still friends, Naruto-kun. Akaino said, which Naruto let out a breath of relief and smiled as he turned his head to Lord Gremory, who seemed he was wanting to ask more questions. As for what you said, yes, I do know. Your energy I sense is undeniable. Heinrich also told me about your special ability as well. Are you well aware of it? Lord Gremory asked. Naruto for a moment froze and nodded. To-san, what ability are you talking about? Rias asked as she looked at her father. Yes, dear, what abilities? Venelana asked. Lord Gremory turned his head to his daughter. Did you happen to see his techniques while you were there? He asked. Rias nodded. And what about his eyes? Rias only shook her head. Lord Gremory then leaned back into the chair. From what Heinrich told me, Naruto has the Rinnegan. Lord Gremory said. Venelana gasped as she put her hand on her mouth while Akaino and Rias looked confused. No, it can't be. Are you absolutely sure of this? Venelana demanded as she looked at her husband. Yes, Heinrich confirmed it. He then turned his head to Naruto. Do you mind if you show us Naruto? Lord Gremory asked. Naruto for a few moments said nothing but then nodded. Closing his eyes for a few seconds, he took a deep breath as he channeled his energy to his eyes and opened them. Everyone in the room gasped as Naruto's eyes turned from blue to purple with black rings around it. So it does exist. Amazing, Lord Gremory said as he looked into his eyes. Akaino didn't get a good look at his eyes when he was fighting, but now looking at it, it seemed very powerful. She was a bit entranced by it. Rias was in a similar boat as Akaino. She had never seen or heard of these eyes, but to her it looked majestic and powerful. To-san, what is the Rinnegan? Rias asked her father. They were very special eyes that came from the Uzumaki devil clan. They were thought of as a myth to the other devil clans. He said as he looked at his daughter. Uzumaki clan? How come I have never heard of it? Rias asked. That is because the Uzumaki clan was not part of the 72 pillars. As a clan, they decided that they didn't want to get involved with the government. The Uzumaki clan were most known for their abnormally high demonic energy and longevity, being able to produce almost infinite amounts of energy and outlive most demons. Although there were special legends of rare special ability thought to have been passed down within the clan, this being the Rinnegan. The reason why you haven't heard of the Uzumakis is because there are none left. They were very recently hunted by demons and fallen angels alike due to fear of their abnormally high energy and mortality. Lord Gremory said. Everyone's eyes focused on Naruto. They were surprised to see him gripping the bed sheets with a lone tear dropping from his eyes as it slid down his face. For Naruto, he wasn't surprised his clan had died. He was more sad than anything. Sad not for the clan, but the one who had taken care of him within the clan. Everyone's face softened as they saw Naruto gripping the sheets, Lord Gremory's especially. Lord Gremory decided to ask a question he dreaded, but had to know. Naruto, do you have any par? I'm an orphan, Naruto said, already knowing the question he was going to ask. When I activated these eyes, my clan kicked me out due to fear of other devils or fallen angels that might come and kill the other members in search for these eyes. Naruto said as he kept his head down in sadness. So you aware of the history and dangers of those eyes? Lord Gremory asked. Naruto nodded as he looked up at him with his Rinnegan activated. These eyes were special eyes that God created himself a long time ago to end a previous war he had with the Satans. Upon ending the war, God decided to trust his fellow men with it to use it for good, as he gave them to his loyalist follower in hopes of using it to combat the devils and fallen angels as they seemed to be getting stronger. But somewhere along the line, that same angel God gave those eyes to fell from grace by sleeping with a devil. Not sure what happened to him, but by then a few generations had passed which led it to be passed down. From what I have read, These eyes show up in random generations. It just so happened it showed up in mine. Naruto finished. Wow Naruto, I'm impressed. That information is usually something someone of your age should find hard to remember. But you're wrong about one thing, Lord Gremory said with a slight smile. Naruto scratched the back of his head in embarrassment. I wanted to know why my clan did what they did to me. So I read up on it. And what do you mean I am wrong about one thing? Naruto asked curiously. Lord Gremory looked at him. You were wrong about it showing up in random generations, he said, to which Naruto leaned in more, wanting him to explain. These eyes show up when a great force threatens the existence of hell, heaven and earth. It is said these eyes were to vanquish an unfathomable evil. Of course these are only legends. But then again, the Rinnegan was deemed a legend, yet you have it, Naruto. Lord Gremory said. Naruto merely gulped at the new information. So something big is coming? Naruto asked nervously. Lord Gremory only sighed. Maybe, maybe not. If anything, you should be careful. Many devils would kill to have your eyes, Naruto. But if anything, you will be most feared once they find out. Lord Gremory said. Wow, he has eyes of God himself. But why is the Rinnegan feared? Akano asked out of curiosity, as she seemed interested in this. The Rinnegan, well, in legend, has been told to come with phenomenal abilities. Abilities none of the three factions can hope to match. Firstly, the user is able to use 5 nature abilities: wind, fire, water, earth and lightning, unlike some devil clans who can use one type of nature ability. Not only that, but they are able to follow movements with ease. These eyes are so powerful, it is said that they are capable of even summoning meteors from the heavens itself. It truly is a very powerful ability. Lord Gremory said. Everyone's mouths were hanging at the new information. Even Naruto's. I didn't even know that at all. Naruto said in shock. Lord Gremory nodded. From what Heinrich told me, you are able to use the extra ability, force repulsion. How did you come across that, Naruto? He asked. Naruto's fist clenched but unclenched as he pretended to take a moment to think. Oh yeah, I saw something that was about to fall on me, so I held my hands out to force it away from my face since I couldn't move in time. When I felt I didn't get hit, I moved my arms to look and saw the object a few meters away from me. After that, I began to play around with it, Naruto said with a slightly strained smile. Lord Gremory nodded and saw the thin smile. He suspected there was more to the story. But he let it go for now. He then scratched his chin in thought. Also, from what I've seen, the Rinnegan is usually permanent, yet you are able to activate it on and off. Do you know why? Lord Gremory asked. Well, the book I read said since it was passed down naturally, this allows the user to turn it off and on, I guess. Naruto said with a shrug. You do know what these eyes have done to you genetically? Lord Gremory asked. Naruto only raised an eyebrow as he shook his head. You're part devil and angel, he said with a smile. Everyone went silent for a few seconds. Naruto blinking as if he was in a trance. What? All 4 yelled in the room. Lord Gremory laughed at what he saw. Yes, it is true, Naruto. I'm not sure how far you have read into the legends of the Rinnegan, but to correct you on your previous explanation on it, the angel that held those eyes did not fall from grace. He was pardoned by him, seeing how he was his loyalist follower. He was the only one was ever pardoned actually, Lord Gremory said as he pulled a book out from his pocket and tossed it over to Naruto, who caught it. All of this is in there. It's a more older book. But tell me, when you were fighting, how did your energy feel when the priest cut you with his sword? Lord Gremory asked. Well, I don't know, to be honest. But it did hurt, that much I know, he said with a chuckle, which Lord Gremory did as well. Right. I'm not sure if you are aware of holy swords, Naruto, but they are very deadly to us devils. That is what also they were using against you. One slice from one is enough to weaken and hurt a devil greatly. But I don't believe that is the case for you, Lord Gremory said. Now that you mention it, I didn't feel myself running out of energy when he had cut me a few times. But it wasn't until I did 2 Shinra Tensais I felt low on energy, since using it twice in one day is my limit, Naruto said, trying to remember the battle. Yes, although the pain affects you, you don't suffer severe energy drainage like what a normal demon does. I think with training you would be able to resist becoming affected by it due to your eyes. I mean, do you ever notice you can say his name and not succumb to pain? Lord Gremory said, shocking Naruto yet again. Wow, I didn't realize how powerful my eyes really were. Ka-san was right, Naruto said softly. Akeno raised her eyebrows in confusion, as did most in the room. Naruto-kun, I thought you were an orphan? Akeno asked. Naruto looked at her with tears in eyes as he smiled. I was, but not before she passed away, Naruto said as he closed his eyes at the painful memory. Akeno and Rias gasped at what he revealed. I am sorry, Nar. It's okay, he said quickly, cutting her off. How did she pass away? Rias asked timidly, breaking the silence, hoping that she wasn't pushing it too far. Naruto looked at her and wiped his eyes. Our neighboring demons had heard about my eyes and decided to see for themselves. When they saw it, some of the demons went to attack me as I stood there frozen. I then remembered her jumping in the way to take the hit for me. I guess it was too much for her body. I saw her die in front of my eyes as I held her. Naruto said as he closed his heart, remembering the painful memory. Rias and Akeno began to cry a little at what they heard. Rias, not imagining what type of pain Naruto had to go through, and Akeno, crying as she could relate immensely. Lord Gremory held his head down at the information, while Venelana let out a few tears for this young boy who had to experience something horrific as to losing a mother. So that's when they kicked you out, I assumed, Lord Gremory said sadly to Naruto, to which he shook his head, which served to confuse Lord Gremory and everyone in the room slightly. The ones who attacked me didn't survive, Naruto said with his eyes closed. Everyone in the room could only look in more confusion. What do you mean, Naruto? Venelana asked very worriedly for the boy. After my Ka-san died right there, I killed them, Naruto said as he opened his eyes, showing many emotions through his Rinnegan. Everyone looked up at him and gasped as they his fierce look. I couldn't take it anymore. The only person who loved me, who would always be by my side and never leave me alone, died. So I killed them, all of them. I killed them with my Rinnegan, Naruto said with a blank look in his eyes. She knew they would kill me if I stayed here. So with the last of her strength, she made a transportation circle for me, he said. I can still remember the last words she told me before she passed away and sent me off, Naruto said with a smile as the others leaned in wanting to hear more. She told me I would become a very special demon with these eyes and that she knew I was always special. She said she would always be with me as long as I had these eyes. It was then I disappeared and ended up in Japan before other members could show up, Naruto said, keeping his smile. I see. So that's the real reason as to how you were able to discover the Shinra Tensei and end up there then, Lord Gremory said, catching on. Naruto nodded with a nervous smile. Yeah, I'm sorry I lied to you guys, Naruto said. Lord Gremory gave him a smile. No, it's quite alright, Naruto. I understand. You have suffered quite a bit at such a young age. To be able to survive up till now is nothing short of impressive. Same goes for you, Akeno, Lord Gremory said as he looked at the girl. The girl smiled at him and gave him a nod. But for Akeno, she was more worried about the boy in front of her. It was funny to her how things in life played out. This boy she had never met, randomly came to her and saved her on a whim of getting to know her. He had also relatively lived the same life she did. She remembered when she told Lord Gremory about her past just a day ago. It was the first time anyone had ever shown her respect for what she had been through. But now, this boy was also suffering the same loneliness she had. That wasn't until she met him. For some reason, she didn't feel that same loneliness around him anymore. Even though she had just met him yesterday, she could tell he genuinely cared about her. Truth be told, she was starting to feel the same way. She smiled as she reached out to touch his hand. Meanwhile, Naruto was in thought about what Lord Gremory had said about Akeno. It seemed she must have lived somewhat of the same life he did. It was then he felt someone suddenly grab his hand, shaking him out of his thoughts. Looking to his left, he sees Akeno gripping it with a smile. Naruto-kun, since you've told us about your past, let me tell you about mine, Akeno said. My mother was a well-known priestess, while my father was a fallen angel. He was hurt and my mother decided to heal him. This led them to fall in love and have me. One day when my father wasn't home, some of his enemies attacked us and my mother died defending me. He wasn't there to help my mother. So I blamed him for her death. I was alone now that she died. I became even more alone when my mother's clan kicked me out due to my blood, she said as tears fell from her eyes. Naruto's eyes widened. So you're… Yes, I'm half human, half fallen angel, she said. I've been alone since my mother died. Just like you have, she said. Naruto tightened his grip on her hand. Akeno-chan, he said softly, not knowing what to say. Rias and her family had heard the story before Naruto, but to hear it again still made them sad, knowing this was happening to another child so young. Hearing your story made me happy. Happy, knowing someone can understand. Akeno looked into his eyes as she wiped her tears. I promise you won't be alone anymore, Naruto-kun. We won't be alone anymore, Akeno said as she smiled. Naruto was amazed. He had thought he was the only one who had experienced this type of hardship. He could now see how his past was a bit similar to hers, both of their mothers dying and then being shunned and hated for something you had no control of. For Akeno, it felt great to share her story with someone who could relate. When she looked at him, she felt like she had to do this. She had to comfort him. She wanted to make sure he wasn't alone as well. Naruto then felt someone else grab his hand. Looking to his right, he saw Rias with a smile. And I will make sure you and Akeno-chan won't be alone either. I may not understand what you or Akeno-chan have gone through, but what I do understand is Akeno is now a part of my family. I was also kind of hoping you would be too. Because families are there for each other, she said. Rias didn't know why she did what she just did, but it felt right to her. Not only that, but both girls absolutely knew one thing: they wanted to be his friend. Naruto could only look at them with a smile as he titled his head down. He let a tear out as he looked up. Thank you, Akeno-chan, Rias-chan, he said. Rias smiled brightly at what she heard while Akeno mimicked her emotion. Lord Gremory and Venelana could only smile at the scene. Well, would you look at that? I haven't seen Rias-chan warm up to someone so quick, Venelana said to her husband. Lord Gremory only chuckled. And Rias-chan is right. Families, especially the Gremorys, are there for each other. Which is why I want to ask you if you want to stay here for now on. Lord Gremory said as he stood up, interrupting their little moment. I don't know, Lord Gremory, Naruto said, unsure. Lord Gremory smiled as he looked towards Rias and Akeno. Well, I know these two certainly hope you would, as Akeno is under the Gremory name now, he said. Naruto looked at Akeno and Rias, who were nodding and smiling. Naruto chuckled seeing how much Akeno and Rias wanted him to accept. Then I would be honored too, Lord Gremory, Naruto said as he looked at him. Good, good. Welcome to the family, Naruto, he said with a smile. Although there is one thing I would like to talk about with you, he said, to which Naruto turned slightly serious seeing how he was as well. You are aware that the Great War has ended for a while, right? He said, to which Naruto nodded. He didn't know much about it, but from what he was told, it was a big battle between the three factions. Honey, you can't possibly. Yes, I do, Venelana-chan. Please trust me on this one, he said, cutting her off, which only served to confuse Naruto more. In recent events, there has been a quarrel within the Seidan faction. Are you aware of the four great Seidans, Naruto? Lord Gremory asked. Naruto nodded. Yeah, they were the devils who ruled the underworld but died in the Great War. They were also said to be the strongest devils that ever existed. Why do you ask? Naruto said to Lord Gremory. Lord Gremory smiled at his knowledge as he nodded. You are correct, Naruto. After they died, the descendants of the original four great Saiyans wanted to continue their legacy and finish the war between the angels and fallen angels. This is why we, the devils, recently created a group called the Anti-Seidan faction in order to combat the descendants, he said to Naruto. You see, my clan along with some others are a part of the Anti-Seidan faction. We would, if anything, like to avoid war with anyone. These devils do not believe in peace, Naruto. Their pride is what's going to be the downfall of the devil race, our race, and it is something I will not stand for. As you can assume by now, we are going to fight against them in hopes of preventing another war. What I'm asking, Naruto, is for you to take part in this and help not only our clan, but our way of life as devils. I would like for you to train here for 2 years here in controlling the Rinnegan. With you by our side, we will be assured victory and minimal casualties. He continued. My son, Searzex, is going to be in the faction as he will be training as well. I'm sure I can get some more information for your Rinnegan and have my son Searzex teach you more about your devil powers. I have faith you can become a strong demon, Naruto, by doing this. Maybe even a high-class devil. I mean, from what I have heard, your potential seems endless, especially with the Rinnegan, he said. Naruto was shocked at what he was hearing. The first being he didn't know there was another war among the devils. And second, being the clan head of the Gremories having such high faith in his abilities. Both were something he wasn't expecting. Naruto was about to say something until Lord Gremory cut him off. He already knew what he was going to say. Naruto, you should not look at these eyes as such a burden. These eyes have been given to you. These eyes can and will change the world, Naruto. You can change things for the better if you wanted, or you can ultimately destroy everything as well. Lord Gremory said as Naruto looked at him surprised. Naruto hadn't really thought about destruction being an option. But he was also beginning to feel the eyes he had were more trouble than they were worth. It was then something Lord Gremory said next that caught his attention. But look at what is around you, Naruto. I have offered you a place within the Gremory clan not out of pity and not out of using you to win a war, but because you're a child who needs it. You may not know this, but the Gremory clan is one of the only devil clans who are affectionate towards its members. This means, I, Venalana-chan, Rias-chan and Akeno-chan and everyone is in this clan are your family now. We fight for each other, Naruto. We fight because we care for each other. So what do you say, Naruto? Will you fight for the Gremories? For your new family? Lord Gremory said to him with a soft smile. Naruto for a moment was silent. He wasn't really expecting to be sucked in all of this. But then again the sound of getting stronger did appeal to him. Maybe he could do good with these eyes of his. He also had nothing before coming here. An exiled orphan working in a nearby town just to survive. He still had nothing, but what does he have now? It wasn't until he felt Akeno grip his hand again along with Rias. Akeno had a worried expression while Rias was mirroring the same one but to a lesser degree. He looked at both in their eyes deeply. It was in that moment everything became clear to him. Everyone here was so easily accepting of him. But looking at Rias and Akeno had sparked something inside of him. He wanted to see them smile. He wanted to have them as friends. He then decided these two girls will become his muse. They will become his motivation to fight and to use these eyes he has for good. He will not see them die like he did his Ka-san. He will fight and get strong to protect these two along with everyone else. Just like he promised to Kano in the beginning and just like what he was going to do now for Rias and her clan members. He gripped both of their hands firmly, which surprised them a bit. He looked at the head of the Gremory clan with a determined look. If it means I get to protect Akeno-chan and Rias-chan, you and Venalana-chan, then I will train as hard as I can. He declared, to which Akeno and Rias slightly blushed at. Lord Gremory and Venalana smiled at the young boy's declaration. Lord Gremory chuckled as he indeed saw his determined expression. Alright, Naruto. Training starts tomorrow morning sharp. He said with a smile, knowing that big things were in store for the young blonde boy in front of him. 2 years later. Ever since that day Naruto defended Akeno and was picked up and asked to live with the Gremory clan, Naruto's life had gotten better exponentially. After he had agreed to stay, Naruto had begun to bond with the Gremory clan. He spent a lot of time talking with Lord Gremory and Venalana. To them, Naruto had become a second son. The clan had also seemed much more livelier as Naruto only seemed to make everyone around him smile. Lord Gremory had taken it upon himself to keep track of his training with the Rinnegan and Devil skills while Venalana began to take the role of a motherly figure to Naruto. She would often scold him whenever he was working too hard, but also compliment him along the way every time after his training was finished. She would always prompt him to call her Ka-san, which made him feel a bit uncomfortable as he had a hard time generally warming up to it. In his heart, his Ka-san that had died will always be his Ka-san in mind and heart. But he did appreciate the gestures Venalana was attempting to make. Naruto had also met Sirzex once he begun his training. Lord Gremory introduced the two as so Sirzex could help him hone his abilities. Naruto was very surprised of his appearance during their first meeting. Naruto had to admit he was the male version of Rias in terms of appearance if she was a bit older. Naruto pegged Sirzex at least a few years older than he was. But he was very shocked to find out he was almost 100 years older than he was. He thought he would be very young as he held the appearance of someone in their 20s. One thing though that surprised Naruto was the carefree attitude he held himself with when he wasn't training. He was a very easy person to get along with, which made it easy for Naruto to talk to him. But Naruto saw how quickly it changed when they began to spar with each other, making him a very strong opponent as well. One thing was for sure, he had a lot to learn in terms of battle. Sparring with Sears opened his eyes to how weak he really was and how much work he needed to do to improve. Flashback. Come on Naruto-kun, you have to do better than that. As a devil, your strength and vision are enhanced. Try to keep up with my movements and hit me with that technique, a figure said with black wings. The figure looked to be very lean and very handsome. He had shoulder-length crimson hair with blue-green eyes. He was wearing what seemed to be loose-fitting clothes that looked to be specifically for training. The figure had his black wings out as he used it to float above the training ground they were in. Naruto scrunched his face in concentration and held his palm out towards Sears, who began to move. Naruto had his Rinnegan activated as he was trying to follow Sears. His pupils were moving erratically, trying to follow his movements as he flew around. As Naruto saw him begin to slow down, he held his palm out. Shinra 10. Oomph. Naruto grunted as he suddenly found his face hurting and himself being hurled across the ground. Do you think a devil will wait for you to unleash your technique? Especially something as deadly as that? You have to be faster and more aware, Naruto-kun. How are you going to protect Ria-tan and Akeno-chan this way? We have 2 years for you to be at least battle-ready. Sears taunted after punching him. Something inside Naruto snapped. At an instant, he pictured what it would be like for them to get hurt in front of him. Naruto got up, pointed his palm towards Sears, who was already moving. No, I will not let them get hurt. Shinra Tensei, he yelled recklessly. And just like that, you're dead, a voice instantly said behind him as he felt a hand on shoulder. Naruto's eyes could only widen as he began to slowly drop his arms and head in defeat as he knew who was behind him, signaling the end of their spar. Sears was right. He wasn't even paying attention just now. If Sears was an enemy, he could have easily killed him. Let this be a lesson, Naruto-kun. You have to learn how to focus and assess the situation you're in. I know for a fact you're able to release that Shinra Tensei technique of yours with ease. So why were you waiting? Sears asked as he retracted his wings and landed on the ground. Naruto sighed as he sat down, Sears following his motion. I don't know. I was just trying to follow you. I saw you slow down, so I thought that would be my chance to hit you. Naruto said. Sears smiled. Well, it's alright, Naruto-kun. This is why we are training. Next time, don't following my movements, but learn how to anticipate them. That way, you have a better chance of hitting me, Sears said. Naruto nodded with a sigh. Looks like I still got to work on my reaction time for the Rinnegan then. Also, Naruto-kun, what I said about Rias and Akeno will most likely be said on the field as well. Especially when they see us grouped together and recognize me. You can't be emotional. I understand you want to protect them, but you have to be calmer than your opponent and not let those type of things get to you. Sears said as he put a hand on his shoulder. Naruto looked at him and smiled. I still have a lot to learn, don't I? Naruto said. Sears laughed. Yes you do, but I have been with you since you have been training and I think you will get there in no time. Just remember what I said. Sears said with a smile as he ruffled his hair, making Naruto smile. Flashback end. Along with the training he was receiving, Naruto's relationship with Akeno and Rias had become stronger than any of the three could have imagined. Within the 2 years, Naruto could without a doubt say Akeno and Rias were his best friends. They had done everything together. They were never found apart from each other except on the occasions Naruto was training with Sears. There was also one thing Naruto had found out during these 2 years with them. He had a major crush on both of them. He always found both of them beautiful, but now they were growing even more beautiful, something he was glad to witness. Rias had only changed a tiny bit. She grew a bit taller along with her beautiful crimson hair, which seemed to get longer as well. Naruto always complimented on her long crimson hair, which made her continue grow it out to his liking. Akeno had also grown taller as well. Her hair had also grew, to a point where she always kept it in a ponytail, to which Naruto complimented her on, which ultimately led her to keep it that way most of the time. All three of them were also growing physically as girls and boys. Something Naruto noticed with the girls whenever they hugged him, as he would feel something press against his chest. The girls did notice this with him as well whenever they hugged, as they felt his muscles, something that would make them both blush. But thinking back to them, he had never been happy. The mere image of them smiling always warmed his heart, along with both of their personalities. Rias was always so kind and sweet. She was also very smart and perceptive for her age. Akano was along those lines. She was very kind and a bit shy at times. But she started to develop a slight teasing personality. She was always teasing him and Rias, which would always make both parties blush. But after being around her for 2 years, he started to slowly tease her back in retaliation about her having a crush on him, which ultimately would have her blushing. But they were always caring of him as well, something he treasured deeply as his mother was the only one who cared for him. Whenever he would train especially, they would make sure he didn't have any injuries and at times scold him for training too hard just like Venelana. He would always smile though and tell him everything was fine. What Naruto didn't know was both Akano and Rias had developed a major crush on him during the 2 years as well. From the time Naruto had saved her, Akano knew he was going to be someone special in her life. She was right as she found herself always feeling happy around him. She was glad he decided to stay here. That loneliness she used to feel was gone. It went away when Rias and the Gremory clan accepting her and Naruto being her friend. Within the 2 years she had found Naruto to become cuter and cuter. He would always make sure her and Rias were okay, and even when they had bad days he would make sure they would at least have a smile on their faces by the end of the day. There was also one compliment he would always give her. A compliment she loved to hear. And it was always about her eyes. Naruto would always tell her that her eyes always looked beautiful, something she would never get tired of hearing from him. For Rias, she had found not only a good friend in Akano but Naruto as well. Being the youngest she didn't have a lot of people to play with. But with Naruto, he would always make time for her and Akano. He also didn't seem embarrassed to compliment not only her but Akano whenever he could. In all honesty, she loved whenever he would compliment her hair. She also knew it was Akino's eyes for her. That was one thing both of them loved from him. He would always express what he felt for them no matter what. Naruto could now be found looking at a practice dummy in front of him as he was doing his daily training within the courtyard. Raising his palm, he held it up looking at the dummy with his Rinnegan activated. Shinra Tensei, he muttered. Boom! His technique collided with the dummy, blasting it back leaving some rocks and dust in its wake. Naruto smiled as he looked at Akano who was on the sidelines watching. Did you see that, Akano-chan? He asked excitedly seeing how much damage he caused. Akano only smiled as she looked at her friend. In 2 short years, Akano could only notice how much he had grown. Naruto had grown the most out of the two over the past couple years. She could still remember him being that little boy. But now he was beginning to grow into his teenage form. From what she could tell he grew a few inches. She guessed he stood at the height of 5 feet 2. His body also became more toned, which resembled that of a swimmer-type body. As he grew, Akano could also take note of his toned muscles that were growing in as well. His hair grew a little more, as it sagged just to the middle of his ears, while his facial features were starting to become more firm with his jaw being a bit more pronounced. All in all, Akano could definitely say he was becoming more and more manlier. And cuter. Did she mention cuter? Akano-chan, come on, did you see that? Akano was snapped out of her daydreaming and smiled as she saw Naruto looking at her. I did see it, Naruto-kun. That was impressive, she said as she got up and made her way over to him. She and Naruto began to make their way over to the dummy that was lying on the ground. Naruto reached it and knelt down to examine it. Wow, I actually made it crack in some places. It even broke at the arms, Naruto said, very pleased at what he saw. It looks like your technique is getting stronger, Naruto-kun, Akano said. Naruto looked at her and smiled sheepishly as he turned off his Rinnegan. Thanks, Akano-chan, he said with a smile. It looks like it certainly has. A voice said behind them. Both turned around to see a familiar figure. Lord Gremory, Naruto said with a slight bow. Akano bowed her head in respect as well. Lord Gremory waved it off. What have I told you about bowing to me, Naruto? He asked. Naruto sighed and smiled. That I don't need to. Lord Gremory smiled. Exactly. Naruto and Akano then spotted Rias next to him, who was smiling. They both smiled at her, acknowledging her presence. Hey Rias-chan, Naruto said. Rias smiled at him. Hi Naruto-kun, Akano-chan, she said happily. Anyways, I have to come inform you. Your training will be coming to an end and that you will be leaving. Lord Gremory said with a serious face. Naruto's expression turned serious as well, while Akano and Rias took on worried expressions. When? Naruto asked. Tomorrow morning. he said. Era, already? Akeno asked, slightly saddened. Lord Gremory smiled. Well, he has been training for 2 years now. It also seems the other faction is starting to move as well. Lord Gremory said as he noticed all three of their expressions to be a bit saddened. How about you stop training for the day, Naruto? You, Akeno-chan and Rias-chan could spend the rest of the day doing what you guys want. Lord Gremory said to him. All three heads perked up. Rias looked to her father. Really, Toussaint? She asked excitedly. Lord Gremory put a hand on top of her head and smiled. Yes, go on ahead, he said. Rias zoomed from her spot down to Naruto and Akeno and began to drag them both by the arm out the compound. Thank you, Lord Gremory. Naruto shouted as he was being dragged away. Thank you as well, Lord Gremory. Akeno said as she too was being dragged away. Lord Gremory only nodded his head with a smile on his face as he watched them disappear from his view. If I didn't know any better, I would say Riat-tan and Akeno-chan have taken a major liking to Naruto-kun. I could even say they have crushes. A figure said beside Lord Gremory. Looking to his left, Lord Gremory spotted his son, Sirzex, leaning against a wall with his arms crossed. Lord Gremory only smiled. It would seem so, wouldn't it? I have no problem with it, he said. His expression then turned serious. Do you think he is ready? Lord Gremory asked his son. Sirzex merely sighed. Ability-wise, most definitely. It will now come down to how he will react in battle. But you did tell me he was able to hold off a priest with mediocre skill. Granted, he knew very little of his powers. But without a doubt he definitely has improved his abilities so much that I'm starting to find a hard time avoiding his Shinra Tensei. His reaction time, thinking and his hand-to-hand are all on point. Sirzex finished. Lord Gremory nodded. Have you told him he might have to take lives of other devils? Lord Gremory asked. Sirzex frowned and nodded. Yes, I did. He told me about what happened to his mother. He told me he was ready to do whatever it took to protect Riat-tan and Akeno-chan. But we'll see once the time comes, Sirzex said. Lord Gremory rose his eyebrows. He wasn't at all against it? He asked his son curiously. Well, you aware of his past? He had to grow up and mature faster than most. I know he's ready to san. Sirzex countered. Lord Gremory nodded as he took in the information. He has told me, though, he will go back to Uzumaki territory during our time out. Sirzex said, getting his father's attention. Lord Gremory looked at him. I see. He wants to find more techniques on the Rinnegan, doesn't he? He deduced. Sirzex nodded. That would make sense. They should have more in-depth information on the Rinnegan aside from what we know. Lord Gremory said. Yes, although it is scary to think that in a few years he should be able to match me in ability. Sirzex said, which made Lord Gremory widen his eyes. And you're positive about this? You do know your ability is already considered as a high-class devil? Lord Gremory told his son. Sirzex only laughed. That Rinnegan of his is amazing. But it's not just his eyes, it's his ability to pick up on things and master them in a short amount of time. He isn't like most kids his age. I believe he will no doubt become a strong demon, Sirzex said with a smile. Lord Gremory only smiled at his son's opinion of Naruto. Is that so? With Naruto. Meanwhile, Naruto was being dragged around by Rias, who was excited to spend the rest of the day with her two friends. Rias-chan, slow down. You're going to pull my arm off. Naruto whined. Rias let go of his arm and huffed. Well, excuse me for being excited to play with my friends, she said. Akeno, who was next to them, giggled. You and Naruto-kun are too cute, Akeno said as she put her hand to her mouth and giggled. Naruto and Rias immediately blushed as they were both being teased again. But hearing this, Naruto smirked. You know, Akeno-chan, you're really cute too, Naruto said innocently, looking at her. Akeno's eyes slightly widened as she turned her head, averting his gaze as she blushed. She then felt an arm wrap around her shoulders. Gotcha, Naruto said with a smile as he put the other arm around Rias, who at this point was giggling. Akeno only shook her head and smiled as she slightly leaned against Naruto. So where are we going, Rias-chan? Naruto asked. Rias only smiled and was about to respond until their destination came into view. There, she pointed. They saw a small park that had a playground. Race you to the swings, Akeno-chan, Rias yelled as she ran forward. You're on, Akeno yelled back as they both raced to the swings. Naruto only laughed as he jogged slightly to catch up to them both. They both were already seated and began to swing their legs. Naruto-kun, come push me, Akeno said as she looked at him. Naruto smiled. Alright Akeno-chan, Naruto said as he made his way behind Akeno. Akeno looked towards Rias, who had a tick mark on her forehead for taking Naruto's attention away first. Akeno saw this and stuck her tongue out in victory. Come on Naruto-kun, push me harder, she said. Naruto smiled as he only pushed her harder, which resulted in her going higher. Naruto-kun, can you push me now? Please? Rias said to him as she pouted. Naruto, who couldn't resist her cute face, walked over to her side. Okay Rias-chan, let's do this, he said as he began to push Rias. Naruto-kun, why did you stop pushing? Akeno yelled as she began to slow down. She then looked to her right and saw why. She saw Naruto pushing Rias now. Looking at Rias, it seemed the tables were turned as Rias was looking at her, sticking her tongue out in victory, which resulted in Akeno developing the tick mark on her forehead this time. Naruto-kun, can you push me now? Akeno asked with a smile. Naruto was still pushing Rias, headed back over to Akeno and began to push her again. Naruto-kun, I'm starting to slow down, Rias yelled after a few seconds of him running to Akeno. In no way she was going to let Akeno win in getting his attention. Naruto ran back over to Rias again. Naruto-kun, can you push me again? Please. Runs back to Akeno. Naruto-kun, I want to go higher. Runs back to Rias. Naruto-kun. Runs back to Akeno. Naruto-kun. Runs back to Rias. Naruto-kun. Runs back to Akeno. Naruto-kun. Runs back to Rias. Naruto-kun? Akeno spoke as she was expecting Naruto to be behind her and not Rias. Naruto-kun? Rias spoke as well, expecting him to be behind her and not Akeno. Once their momentum on the swings died down, they looked back to see Naruto on the ground, crying comical tears as he was heaving for oxygen. Naruto-kun, they both yelled as they got off the swing and ran to him. Naruto-kun, are you okay? Akeno asked as she picked up his head and cradled it in her lap. Too much. Swing. Back. Forth. Head. Spinning. He murmured dizzily with stars in his eyes. Akeno only smirked. Ah, how sad. Would you like me to kiss your head to make it all better, Naruto-kun? Akeno asked with a smile. Naruto, who was currently on the ground, sprang up like hot lava had just touched him. No, I'm okay Akeno-chan, he said with a blush as he scratched the back of his head. Akeno smiled slyly at seeing this. It was always so cute to her seeing him get embarrassed. Let's sit on the swings, Rias said with relief seeing Naruto was okay. Naruto nodded as they made their way back to the swings. Naruto sat in the middle of the three swings while Akeno and Rias took both sides. It became relatively silent between them. Naruto was casually looking at the other kids playing while Akeno and Rias were looking around enjoying some of the scenery. As they were enjoying their silence, Rias, who saw a few parents pick up their kids, heard them whispering about her. Oh my, is that Rias Gremory of the Gremory clan? One mother asked to her husband. Well, what do you know? That is her. I should have known she was a Gremory due to that hair. The father said as they began to walk away with their child. Rias only sighed at what she heard. That was one thing she did not like. She was thankful for her family and wealth in the Gremory clan, but that is all people saw her as. Rias Gremory of the Gremory clan. Never just Rias, the Rias who likes to play and have fun, the Rias that loves Japanese artifacts. Rias only sighed again at the thought of that. Rias-chan, are you okay? A voice next to her asked. Rias looked to see Naruto looking at her in concern. That was one of the things she loved about Naruto. He made sure not only her, but Akeno as well were always okay. He always wanted to make them happy. Rias put up a weak front. I'm okay Naruto-kun, she said smiling. Naruto snorted seeing how she wasn't even trying to act like she was okay. Rias-chan, I've been around you for 2 years. I know when you're lying, Naruto said. Rias sighed yet again, she should have known. She looked him in the eyes, hers conveying nervousness. Do you think of me as Rias Gremory of the Gremory clan? Rias asked him. Naruto looked at her with a raised eyebrow. Of course I do. I mean you are Rias Gremory of the Gremory clan, Naruto said. Oh, Rias said as she held her head down. Slightly saddened, he looked at her the same as everybody else did. However, Naruto said, getting her attention. You are also Rias. Rias, who is very sweet to not only her friends but to her clan members. Rias, who is very smart, beautiful and sometimes vulnerable like right now. You are also the Rias who has an obsession with Japan, which I think is a little unhealthy. But that is the Rias I know and love, Naruto said as he looked at her with a smile. Rias' eyes widened at what she had heard. That was everything she had wanted to hear and more. To think Naruto knew all of these things about her. Rias got off her swing and took a few steps over to him. Naruto only rose an eyebrow at her action. When she reached him, she bent down and kissed his cheeks, making his eyes widen. "Thank you, Naruto-kun," she whispered with a smile as she walked back to her swing with a slight blush. Akeno, who had heard the conversation, smiled. It was just like Naruto to know what to say to make Rias feel better. Although she too was curious as to what Naruto thought of her. They may have been friends for 2 years, but even she did not know what he fully thought of her. "Naruto-kun?" Akeno asked as she looked at him. Naruto turned his head to look at Akeno. "Yeah, Akeno-chan?" he said with a smile. "What do you think of me? As you know, I am a hybrid of a human and fallen angel. Rias-chan tells me when she is allowed to have a peerage she wants me as her queen. Then I'll become a half-devil and half-fallen angel. Would you still accept me then, knowing what I am?" Akeno asked nervously. Naruto looked at her with a frown. "What are you saying, Akeno-chan? Of course I'll still accept you," he shouted at her, surprising her. "Akeno-chan, ever since that day I saved you, I have been around you and gotten to know you. I don't care what type of devil or fallen angel you are. You're Akeno Himejima, one of the prettiest, smartest and coolest girl I have seen. So don't think any different. You, Rias and I will always be friends, and I will always be there for you. In plus, if you don't remember, I am a half-angel and half-devil. So we are no different, Akeno-chan," Naruto said strongly. Akeno could only widen her eyes at what he said. She never knew he felt so strongly about her and Rias. How could she also be so forgetful as well? Naruto was pretty much the same as she was. A hybrid. Her lips formed into a smile after she heard what she just did. It became clear to her that Naruto liked her regardless of what she was. Something she will always remember. Rias, who was on the opposite side this time, smiled at what she heard. Seeing how they had played for a while, Naruto finally got up from his swing and looked at them. "I think it's about time we head home, Rias-chan, Akeno-chan," Naruto said with a smile as he offered them both his hands. Rias and Akeno looked at each other and smiled. Taking his hand, they quickly wrapped both of their arms around his one arm, latching onto it. "Yes, let's," Rias said as she held onto his arm. Naruto then felt a pair of lips on his cheek. Widening his eyes, he looked to his side to see Akeno smiling at him with a blush. "You don't know how much that means to me," she whispered just loud enough for Naruto to hear. Naruto must have thought it was because he said to her. He only smiled at her. "No problem, Akeno-chan," he whispered back. The three of them walked at a comfortable pace back to the Gremory household. Rias and Akeno were smiling at how things went today. It was a good day for both of them considering they got to play and be with their crush. Although they were disheartened that their best friend had to leave tomorrow to fight a miniature war within the Satan faction. Time sure passes by. They didn't even know how long he would be gone. It was then they felt their crush stop. Breaking their train of thought, they looked at Naruto to see him looking off in some direction. He then turned his head to look at them. "Hey Akeno-chan, Rias-chan, why don't you guys go up to the compound since it's close? I want to check something out real quick," Naruto said to them. Akeno and Rias only rose their eyebrows at what he could have possibly wanted to look at. "Are you sure you don't want us to come with you, Naruto-kun?" Rias asked. Naruto laughed lightly. "Yeah, I'll be fine. You guys go ahead. I'll be back in a few minutes," Naruto said to them. Akeno and Rias shrugged and untangled themselves from his arms and began to walk home. They took one last look at him before heading back to the compound, wondering what he was going to do. Little did they know they were in for a surprise. Naruto had begun to walk in a different direction of where Akeno and Rias were going. He appeared to be walking down a street in a specific direction. Hopefully this is something Akeno-chan and Rias-chan will like. I guess it will do for now. Until later, that is, Naruto said to himself as he had his hands in his pockets. Walking down, he came to a small building with many machines inside. Walking inside, many noises assaulted his ears. Naruto looked around to see many flashing lights along with different kids having fun with the machines. Naruto smiled as he saw how the atmosphere was. Walking around, it seemed he was looking for one machine in particular. Naruto stopped in front of a small machine that was against the wall. He smiled as he found the object he was looking for inside the machine. "There it is," he said with a smile as he reached into his pocket and took money out, thus proceeding to put it in the machine. The following morning, it seemed to be quite early in the underworld as we could now be seen at the Gremory household. Two figures were dressed as if they were going to war. One was Sirzex standing tall and firm. On him was a shoulder pad type like armor. It was beautifully designed that was colored black and gold. Under the initial shoulder pad type armor were other protruding type pads. There was also a nice sized chest plate in the middle. Under was a long dark blue cape that was sported with long white garb with a dark blue sash across his waist. The other was Naruto. Unlike Sirzex, he sported a long black cloak that came down to his ankles. It was slightly unbuttoned as you can see him sporting a similar white garb like Sirzex. His outfit was very simple as he decided he wanted to be able to move freely. Most of the clan members were there as well, coming to see them both off. Most notable were Lord Gremory and Venelana. Lord Gremory could only look at his son and Naruto with pride. He knew that they would resolve this issue and make it back unharmed. Meanwhile, Venelana had slight tears in her eyes. She couldn't help but worry about them both as well. She knows Sirzex was strong, very strong. He did inherit her ability of destruction after all, but as a mother she still couldn't help but worry. Then there was Naruto. She smiled as she thought about the 2 years he was here. She had immediately took the role of a mother figure to him. Well, tried to at least. Even though he didn't need it and still felt uncomfortable about it, she still wanted to let him know he was family, a part of their family. She would also notice something about Naruto whenever she would scold him. At times when she would scold him and lecture him, he would always argue with her. But after, she would see a small smile play on his face, like he appreciated the attention she was giving. Thinking back to it made her smile as she knew she is slowly getting through to him. She was still worrying about them both. The only thing that made her relax was she knew her son and Naruto had built a strong bond during these 2 years, so she knew they would both look out for each other. While mainly Sirzex doing the looking out, Akano and Rias were smiling on the outside, but on the inside they were sad. I mean, who wouldn't be sad knowing their crush and best friend will be going away for who knows how long? They both wanted to at least show him they were interested in him, so when he came back they could both probably become boyfriend and girlfriend. But it just seemed they were just too afraid. Aside from the kissing on the cheek and teasing, that was all they could muster up. But both knew they couldn't do it now as it was time for him to leave and their confidence dwindling. Lord Gremory was the first to step up. He laid a hand on Sirzek's shoulder and smiled. "You be careful now, you hear?" Lord Gremory said. Sirzek only smiled. "Of course, Tusan. You worry about what goes on here. We'll be back in no time," he said with a smile. "You look out for him also. You got that?" Lord Gremory said, referring to Naruto. Sirzek only nodded. "Of course. That is if he needs me too. I don't think he will need me that much considering how much he has grown," he said. Lord Gremory only nodded. "I'm proud of you, son. Show them the Gremory name," he said with a smile as he stepped back while Sirzek only smiled at him. Venelana then came forward and wrapped her arms around her son. "Be careful, okay? And watch after Naruto, alright? I don't want anything happening to the both of you. I want both of you to come back safely," she said, sniffling. Sirzek only laughed as he patted his mother's back in attempt to comfort her. "I will, Ka-chan. Don't worry about us," he said. Venelana wiped a tear from her eye and smiled. "It's a mother's job too," she said as she kissed his forehead and stepped back. Rias and Akano then stepped forward. Sirzek smiled at his little sister and friend. "Ria-tan, you be good now, okay? I want you to train also. Become strong like me, understand?" he said as he ruffled her hair. Rias only smiled and nodded. "Hi, Oni-san, be careful, okay?" she said as she hugged him with her little arms. Sirzek merely smiled as he then looked at Akano. "Akano-chan, you take care of Ria-tan, okay? She can sometimes be quite obnoxious when her Oni-san isn't around," he said with a smile as Akano only giggled. "Oni-san," Rias whined in embarrassment while everyone laughed. Akano only nodded with a smile. "Good luck and be careful, Sirzek-sama," she said. Everyone had then turned their attention to Naruto, who was smiling at them all. Lord Gremory was the first to come forward again. Naruto-kun, you have grown in these past 2 years. I am proud to say you have become a great devil and will continue to grow. I know you will do well in this war you two have to face. I'm proud of you. Venalana-chan is proud of you, and most of all everyone here is as well. Do not forget that Naruto. Lord Gremory said as he patted him on the shoulder. Naruto merely smiled at what he had said. Thank you, Lord Gremory, he said softly to him. Lord Gremory only smiled back and nodded. Venalana came forward and hugged him the same as when she did with Circex. She pulled away with a stern expression. You be careful as well, okay? If you think you need to come back then please do. I would rather have you come home injured than dead. You understand? She said, still having the same stern expression. Naruto merely chuckled as he reached out and hugged her, which shocked her. This had been the first affectionate gesture he had shown her since she had known him. Thank you, Venalana-chan, he said softly. Venalana, who was still shocked about the affectionate gesture, returned the hug nonetheless and smiled. She was glad their relationship was moving forward. A few seconds later, Venalana backed away from the hug and kissed his forehead. Be careful, Naruto-kun, she said with a smile. Naruto, who was a bit shocked at first, touched his forehead and smiled as he nodded. The last two to come up were Akano and Rias. Both had sad expressions clearly evident on their face. Noticing it, Naruto only smiled at them and began to talk, hoping to make them feel better. Don't be sad, Akano-chan, Rias-chan. I won't be gone forever. I will come back, I swear, he said, trying to make them feel better. Rias and Akano couldn't take it anymore and lunged forward, both wrapping their arms around his body. Naruto wasn't ready for it as he stumbled back a little but was still able to keep his standing position. Naturally, Naruto put his arms around the two girls. But after a while, he felt his chest become damp. He pulled back from the hug to look at him. Naruto could only look at them with sadness. It absolutely broke his heart to see them sad, and the way they were acting only made it worse. Naruto could only sigh. I guess it's time now, he thought. Akano-chan, Rias-chan. It's okay. Please stop crying. Look, I actually got you two something, Naruto said as he started to reach into his cloak. With that said, they automatically stopped crying to look at him in confusion. What did you get us, Naruto-kun? Akano asked as Rias nodded in agreement, curious as to what he had gotten them. Naruto pulled his hand out of his cloak with his hands in a closed fist. He then got down on one knee. Lord Gremory's and Venalana's eyes widened. Don't tell me. Oh, I think so, Venalana-chan, Lord Gremory said with a grin. Naruto opened his hand to reveal two reins. Everyone there, including Rias and Akano, gasped at what they saw Naruto do. Akano-chan, Rias-chan. I've known you both for 2 years now. And in those 2 years, I have come to like you both a lot. I can't help but get a certain feeling in my stomach when I'm around you two. I know every time I see you both, I'm always happy. So what I would like to know is, would you two become my girlfriends when I come back? Naruto said nervously as he held the two reins. Lord Gremory merely chuckled at what he heard from Naruto. Guess I was wrong. But the boy sure does know how to keep you in suspense, Lord Gremory said with a smile. Talk about being bold. 2 girlfriends at age 12, huh? You surely are something, Naruto-kun. Riat-tan say yes. I could already see Naruto as my future brother-in-law. Circex yelled as he flailed his arms, making everyone there laugh. Akano and Rias this whole time were silent. Both didn't know what to say. At first they thought he was going to actually propose to them, but he had just asked them to be his girlfriends, probably already knowing marriage was too early. Akano was the first to snap out of her stupor and speak up. I would like nothing more than to become your girlfriend when you come back, Naruto-kun, she said with a smile. I accept, Naruto-kun. I would love to be your girlfriend, Rias said with a smile. Naruto got up from his knee and smiled as he both handed Rias and Akano their reins. It was then everything made sense to them. Is this what you wanted to look at yesterday? Akano asked as she looked at the ring and noticed it wasn't real. Naruto only nodded with a smile. Yeah, it is. I saw it through a window in one of those game machines, he said. He then took both of their hands that didn't hold the ring and looked at them. I just thought I would get these as promise that I will come back to you both. And when I do, I want you both to be my side, Naruto said with a soft smile. Akano and Rias looked at each other and nodded with smiles as they both jumped on Naruto, hugging him again, this time with happy expressions. After a big hug, they both got off of him with bright smiles which only served to make Naruto smile. "I'll be waiting, Naruto-kun," Rias said with a smile. "But don't make us wait till long, Naruto-kun." Akano teased as she smiled at him. I will be back when this thing is over with. But the problem is I don't know how long this problem will last," Naruto said as he scratched his head and looked over at Sirzex, who was nodding. "Yes, what Naruto-kun says is true. But I assure it will not be that long," Sirzex told them. Sirzex looked at Naruto and nodded. "Alright, Naruto-kun, it's time to go," Sirzex said as he turned around. Naruto nodded and was going to turn around as well, until someone pulled on his hand. Turning around, he saw Akano and Rias looking at him with blushes. It was then Akano came forward and gave him a small peck on his lips. An action Naruto couldn't reciprocate in time as he was in shock. Akano giggled as she saw the dazed expression on Naruto's face from the kiss. Rias then stepped up and gave him a light kiss as well. "Ah!" was the collective sound that came from everyone. They both backed away with blushes on their face. Naruto had gained an even bigger blush, being that he was not used to Akano and Rias showing affection towards him like this. Naruto was still glued to his spot as he touched his lips, not even paying attention to anyone else. Akano and Rias could only giggle at his cute gobsmacked face. Sirzex, who had seen this, only shook his head with a smile. "Alright, lover boy, let's get a move on," Sirzex said with a smile. Naruto was snapped out of his musings and nodded. He looked at Akano and Rias one more time and smiled at them before turning away to catch up with Sirzex. Ah, talk about a little fluff. Makes a nigga want to fall in love. Anyways, if you didn't understand the scene where Naruto is by himself, he goes to an arcade. In that arcade he finds those small machines where you deposit a quarter or more and you get a small prize. In that were plastic rings. I actually did that for a chick in real life to score brownie points. That's where I got the idea from. And let's just say I got major brownie points. And some winking face. So what did you think? Review, favorite, follow if you haven't already. I also believe I am going to be working on the next chapter of Kyoka Suigetsu next. So you might not get an update of this story until I finish Kyoka Suigetsu. Or who knows, you might even get both. But no promises. And because I love you guys so much, I'm going to start doing these little snippets of the next chapter for you all. Till next time. The Yellow Flash. Next time. Why the hell did you attack me, and the who hell are you? Naruto asked the man calmly in front of him. The old man smiled as he relaxed his posture and stroked his mustache. I am the guardian of this shrine. Only those who wield the eyes of God may pass through. Although I could ask you the same question, young man. The old man said to him. Naruto's eyes widened at what he heard the old man say. The eyes of God. He couldn't mean. Naruto closed his eyes and took a deep breath in. He slowly opened them to look at the old man. The old man's eyes widened as he saw the purple ripples in the young monk's eyes. The old man smiled. So you have finally arrived. Come, young one, there is much we must talk about. The old man said as he turned around and walked forward. Hey, wait, what do you mean we have much to talk about? Naruto yelled as he ran to catch up to him. The old man looked over his shoulder and smiled. We have to prepare you for the apocalypse, he said. So where is this place? Naruto asked as he and Sirzex were walking along a path. It had been a few hours that they had been walking since they left the Gremory compound. Naruto looked at him and smiled. We are going to the headquarters of the Satan faction, Sirzex said to him. Naruto sighed. And how far is this headquarters? Naruto said. Sirzex chuckled slightly. Don't tell me you're tired already, Naruto-kun? Sirzex said. Naruto huffed. Well, I mean, we have been walking for hours now and I have seen nothing but trees, Naruto said, gesturing to the scenery. Well, it wouldn't be good if enemies could easily find our base, right? Sirzex said to him. Naruto thought about and nodded as it did make sense. There is also something I want to mention to you, Sirzex said as Naruto looked at him. This faction is going to be comprised of high-class devils. From what I have been told, I am going to be one of the leaders of one of the groups. So that means you're going to have to stick with me, Sirzex said as Naruto nodded. So who is all going to be in this faction? Naruto asked Sirzex. Well, the devils are all mainly from the 72 pillars. So you will see a bunch of other clans there along with some other devils who are for the cause, Sirzex said to him as Naruto nodded. After a few minutes of silence between them, Sirzex smiled. We are getting close. Searsex said as he felt two energies start to near him. Naruto tensed as he was sensing them also. It's okay, Naruto-kun. It must be the guards in the outpost. Searsex said. A few seconds later, two tall figures in heavy armor and bat wings lunged forward, stopping in front of them. They both held axes. Identify yourself, one of the guards said as he tightened his grip around his axe while the one behind him did the same, ready to attack just in case they were an enemy. Searsex nodded in respect. I am Searsex Gremory, this is my companion Naruto Uzumaki and we are here on request of Lord Gremory. Searsex said as he pulled an envelope out of his robe and handed it over to them. The other guard took the note and read over it and looked at Searsex again. This way, Gremory-sama. The others have begun to gather. The guard said as they turned their backs and began to walk forward. Searsex nodded as he looked at Naruto and nodded at him, signaling him to follow. Let's go, Naruto-kun. It's time for you to meet some of the strongest devils in the underworld. Searsex said. Naruto nodded but slightly gulped. He had never met anyone as powerful as Searsex, so to meet people who were at his level and maybe higher was starting to become a bit surreal to him. Anti-Satan Faction HQ. As they walked, they finally came out of the forest and came across what looked like a manor. It looked to be a good size as they began to walk on a short pathway with grass surrounding it from both sides and huge eater fountain in the middle of the courtyard. As they approached the building, there were many guards posted outside while other devils were roaming around the courtyard as well. This way, Gremory-sama, the guard in front of them said as they reached the door. Searsex looked back to see Naruto taking in the sights. Naruto-kun, stay close to me, he said. Naruto nodded as he walked a bit faster, catching up to Searsex. The guard let them in the house and began to lead them though it. Naruto, who was walking beside Searsex, couldn't help but look around at how nice everything looked. He had only seen one house that was even remotely close to this one, and that was the one Rias lived in. He was snapped out of his musing as he began to hear many different voices. Ah, Searsex, glad you could make it, a voice said. Naruto slightly moved his head towards the side to see a young tall man shaking Searsex's hand. Ajuka, it's nice to see you again, Searsex said. The now identified Ajuka nodded as he looked at Searsex, then Naruto with a raised eyebrow. Seeing this, Searsex explained. Ajuka, this Naruto Uzumaki. He is going to be helping the Satan faction. Searsex said. Naruto looked at the guy Searsex was talking and could see he was the same height as him. He also had blonde hair like himself that was slightly relaxed over his forehead. He seemed to be wearing clothing like Searsex was minus the shoulder pad type armor. Uzumaki, huh? So there is one alive? Ajuka said as he eyed the blonde boy in front of him. Not to sound rude, Searsex, but he doesn't look no more than 12 or 13 in appearance. This is a war, and kids do not have any place in it. Ajuka said, sounding a bit more concerned than blunt. Searsex smiled. That would be true in most cases, Ajuka, but Naruto is a special case. And I believe you will soon find out why, Searsex said. Ajuka looked at his longtime friend critically for a few seconds. He knows Searsex wouldn't do anything as rash as bringing a kid to a battlefield. So he must have had good reason. Ajuka was about to speak again until a female voice got their attention. Oh, Searsex-chan, Juka-chan. Ajuka face palmed while Searsex only shook his head with a smile as they seemed to know who the voice belonged to. Serafal, it is good to see you again, Searsex said as he faced the female who was now standing beside them. She was shorter than both Searsex and Ajuka. She had long, black hair tied in twin ponytails with a pink hat over her head. She had violet eyes and a childlike body, but her eyes were anything but childlike as it was clearly straining the clothes she was wearing. She wore a pink-type jacket but without the selves that had a collar in white on it. The jacket was short as it stopped a few inches above her belly button. At top of her jacket was a pink bow with a star in the middle of it. She also sported a short pink miniskirt with knee-high black pink striped socks with black boots. I can't believe you still wear that. Ajuka deadpanned as he looked at Serafal's outfit. Serafal huffed. You're just jealous because my outfit is better looking than yours, Juka-chan. Serafal said as she spun around and landed in a pose as stars surrounded her. Man, to think I had to coordinate attacks for this little faction when I could be sleeping. A male voiced mumbled. Falbium, I see you're here as well, Searsex said, spotting another familiar face. Falbium stopped walking and spotted Sirzex, Ajuka and Serafal. Falbium sighed but smiled seeing his friends. Yeah, they are making the head strategist of the faction. Falbium said as he sighed again. Sirzex could only chuckle seeing Falbium's very lazy attitude. Naruto, who was listening to this, felt so out of place. He could tell everyone that had talked to Sirzex held considerable amount of power, and that they also seemed to be well acquainted with one another. Naruto's eyes landed on Falbium. Naruto saw he was another tall male but with brunette hair. He too was wearing clothes worthy of a noble. Sirzex looked down to see Naruto looking very confused and a bit nervous. Sirzex smacked himself mentally. He should have introduced Naruto to his friends as they were coming one by one. Naruto-kun, these people here are my friends. The blonde man here is Ajuka Astaroth from the Astaroth clan. The bubbly woman here is Serafal Citri from the Citri clan, and this man here is Falbium Glace Alabalas. Sirzex said. Naruto only looked at them with awe. Naruto had to think these were high-ranking devils like Sirzex. He could feel their power levels were close to Sirzex if not equal in some ways. So this is what it is like to be in a room with a bunch of high-class devils. Amazing, Naruto thought in awe. Naruto then saw Sirzex giving him a look that said to introduce himself as well. Oh, Naruto said as he scratched his head sheepishly. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. It's nice to meet you all, Naruto said as he gave them all a bow. Uzumaki? Didn't think I would see one after what had happened, a young one at that. Especially here with a bunch of older devils fighting a war. Falbium said as he looked at Naruto. Ah Falbi, look at him, you're so cute Naru-chan. Serafal said as he leaned forward and pinched his cheeks, then brought him into her bust, suffocating him. That's what I said, but Sirzex over here tells me he will not be a problem. Ajuka said as he looked at Falbium. Falbium looked at Sirzex for a second and yawned. Well, if Sirzex says he's fine, then he's okay with me, he said casually. Serafal on the other hand was smiling from ear to ear as she was still hugging Naruto. How would you like to be my plush Naru-chan? Serafal said as she began shaking him more into her bust. Sirzex then put a hand on her shoulder. Would you please let him go, Serafal? I need him, Sirzex said as he put his palm on his forehead. Yeah, and by this rate you'll kill the poor kid, Ajuka said in amusement. Serafal let go of him and giggled seeing him hunched over huffing for air. Oh oxygen my love, I will never take you for granted ever again, Naruto said in between breaths. Sirzex and the rest of them only shook their head in amusement. Sirzex, the meeting is going to begin. We should head towards the main room, Ajuka said, getting his and everyone's attention seeing how everyone had begun to file in one room. Oh yeah, I'm the one speaking in that meeting. Damn, well I guess I better get it over with, Falbium said with a sigh as he walked on ahead as Ajuka followed as well. Come on Naru-chan, Serafal said to him with a smile. Naruto looked at her and smiled back as he nodded while Sirzex followed them. Naruto-kun, Sirzex said, getting the boy's attention. I want you to pay attention in this meeting. Everything Falbium says will be important. He is the best tactician here in the underworld and any information he provides you will be vital. Do you understand Naruto? Sirzex said as he turned his head to look at him. Naruto nodded. Hi, I will make sure to listen, Naruto said with the utmost seriousness. Sirzex nodded and ruffled his hair with a smile. Ah but Sirzex-chan, Falbi gets so boring when he talks. Serafal whined. Sirzex chuckled. That may be true Serafal, but you know he offers information that is very useful, he said back to her. Serafal sighed. Yeah I guess that's true, she said. The three finally came to a big room where there were many chairs set up. There were already many devils seated. In the front was a stage with a small podium and a standing map. Naruto saw Falbium take the front. The three of them sat towards the middle and waited for it start as the last of the devils were slowly coming in. Falbium looked out and saw that everyone who was involved in the faction had arrived. With a cough to get everyone's attention, he began to speak. Right, as you know we are here to combat the Satan faction. From the intel we have gathered, they are gathering in the forest here, Falbium said as he walked and pointed to the map. We are here. So that would mean if we were to engage them in a few series of battles, it would be in this middle area here, Falbium said, moving his finger towards the middle of the map. Do we know how many have gathered? Ajuka asked out loud, getting the Falbium's attention. We do not have an exact number, but we know that we have a similar number to them, Falbium said to Ajuka as he nodded. How many ready devils do we have then? Sirzex asked. Falbium looked at him. Around 500 or so. Falbium responded. I see. So we must be going to war soon then if they have built their numbers that high. Are they planning on attacking us with all their forces? A devil within the meeting asked. Falbium shook his head. I don't believe so. They know nothing of our abilities or tactics yet. It would be foolish to launch an all-out assault without first engaging in a few skirmishes. That is why I want to first send a few scouts. I want to confirm our intel before anything. Falbium said to them, to which everyone in the room nodded. I think we could do that. A familiar male voice said. Falbium looked out and slightly widened his eyes at who spoke. You want to do this, Sirzex? Falbium asked, surprised, while Serafal and Ajuka looked at him surprised as well. Sirzex crossed his arms and legs and smiled. Yes, I think Naruto-kun and I here would do just fine. Sirzex said as he looked at Naruto with a smile. Naruto looked back and nodded. Everyone who had heard Sirzex speak looked back to see Sirzex sitting next to a blonde boy. Ah, Sirzex-san? One regular devil said. Sirzex made eye contact with him. Yes? Ah, where is there a boy here of all places? The devil said. Sirzex smiled. He already know this would be a common question. This boy is under the Gremory clan name and he is under my protection. And for him being here, I believe he will be our trump card and ultimately deciding factor in this war. Sirzex said strongly. Everyone's eyes widened, including Naruto's. The Gremory clan name was well known throughout the underworld. Sirzek's name was no different, being how strong he already was. Falbium, Ajuka and Serafal were also very surprised at how strongly their friend Sirzex felt about this boy. He must have been obviously special for him to warrant such praise. Falbium then looked at Naruto to see him also surprised as well. Naruto, he said, getting his attention. Do you know what this mission entails? He asked. Naruto took a deep breath and nodded. Yes, we are only to scout and confirm your intel. Naruto said as Falbium nodded. You do know there might be a risk of an encounter with the other faction if things do not go right? He asked, wanting to make sure the little boy truly understood. Naruto closed his eyes for a few seconds and thought. This is what he has been training for. By no means his training was complete, but this is why he was working day and night on the skills he had available to him. To make sure not only he could protect Rias and Akano, but to protect his family as well. He slowly opened his eyes and looked at Falbium with the utmost seriousness. Falbium's eyes widened and his jaw slightly dropped at what he saw. Naruto opened his eyes to reveal his Rinnegan. Naruto wanted to show he knew what he was getting into and just how serious he was about this. Falbium couldn't speak as he saw something he had never seen before. But it wasn't just the eyes that shocked him, it was the intensity at which was inside the boy's eyes. Just as Falbium blinked, Naruto's eyes were back to its original color. Getting a hold of himself, Falbium spoke. Very well, you both shall leave tonight then. As soon as you confirm the numbers, come back. It's a simple mission, Falbium said to Naruto and Sirzex. Naruto and Sirzex nodded. Falbium then looked at the rest. For the rest of you, take tonight to relax. Tomorrow we will begin to formulate our plans and strategies and prepare ourselves for war. Meeting adjourned, Falbium said. The devils along with Naruto, Serafal and Sirzex got up as many began to file out. Falbium looked at Sirzex and sent him a look saying he needed to talk to him. Ajuka saw this as well. Sirzex turned to Naruto. Naruto-kun, why don't you go with Serafal to get a quick meal and relax? I'll come get you once it's time to leave, he said. Naruto looked at Serafal, who smiled and nodded as she took his hand and dragged him out. Ajuka and Falbium walked over to Sirzex, who was looking at Naruto being dragged away. I can see why you have the utmost confidence in him, Falbium said as he crossed his arms. Sirzex smiled. You saw? Falbium nodded. To think it's even real is amazing in itself. Falbium said. Alright, you better tell me what you two are talking about, Ajuka said to them both. Falbium looked at him and laughed slightly. I have a feeling you will know about it soon enough, Falbium said as he walked out. Ajuka looked at his childhood friend, who was smiling as well. Alright, you better tell me right now, Sirzex. I'm not playing around anymore, Ajuka said, slightly annoyed. With Naruto. Naruto for the life of him couldn't understand why he couldn't escape from Serafal's grip on his hands. To him it felt like clamps. Whenever he moved his hand, her grip became tighter. He only sighed as he gave up, letting bygones be bygones. Soon after they slowed down and came into a big room filled with many entree-type dishes and drinks. It was a big room that was neatly decorated. In it were 3 long rows of tables filled with many foods, as off to the side were the drinks. "Wow, look at all the food here, Naruto-chan," Sarafal said excitedly. Naruto couldn't help but smile as he looked at Sarafal and her bubbly personality. "Yeah, it all looks good," Naruto said as he walked to one row to look at the food. "Well, come on Naruto-chan, let's get some," Sarafal said as she handed him plate. After getting as much food as they could on one plate, they both went outside of the room into another room where there were many tables set up which looked to be designated for those to sit down and eat. Picking one where nobody was seated at, Naruto and Sarafal took their seats and began to eat their food. For someone who seemed to be so childish and bubbly, Naruto was surprised to see Sarafal eat with such grace. Not a single drop of food was spilled and her face remained cleaned, only to be wiped a few times. Sarafal, who had just taken a bite, looked to see Naruto looking at her with raised eyebrows. Sarafal giggled. "You know, I may act childish, but I do know how to eat properly," she said with a slight huff. "Same couldn't be said for you," she added as she saw bits of food still on Naruto's face. Naruto understood what she meant and blushed in embarrassment as he went to go grab a napkin. "Here, let me do that for you," she said as she quickly grabbed the napkin Naruto was going for. She slightly leaned over and wiped his face with the napkin. Naruto's face couldn't get any redder at such the action as he was not used to it at all. He looked at Sarafal to see her smiling at his embarrassed expression. As she quickly finished, she winked at him playfully. "You're such a cutie Naruto-chan," she said. Naruto lowered his head a bit and smiled. Thank you Sarafal-san," he said. Sarafal couldn't help but giggle again. "You're so cute when you're embarrassed." "So Naruto-chan, how did you meet Sears-chan?" Sarafal asked. Naruto took a bite and looked at her. "Well, I met him through rescuing my friend Akano-chan. Rias-chan happened to be there and she took me and Akano-chan both to their house. After that, they wanted me to stay, so I did, and I began training for this war with Sears-X," Naruto said as he took another bite of his food. "I see. Your parents surely must have to say something about that," Sarafal said. Naruto's expression turned a bit sad as he looked at Sarafal. "I don't know my dad, but my mom dead protecting me," Naruto said sadly. Sarafal's expression softened as she saw him let out a small tear. She of course did not know what it was like considering she grew up in a well-known devil clan, but for some reason she couldn't help but want to comfort him. Getting up from her chair, she made her way towards Naruto. Bending down on one knee, she grabbed his face with both hands. Using one of her hands, she wiped away a tear with her knuckle as she then slightly tilted his head down and gave him a kiss on the forehead. Naruto froze at the kiss he got from Sarafal. Naruto of course was never used to intimate contact from another woman, well, the first real one being the kisses from Akano and Rias. He was snapped out of his slight daze as Sarafal separated from him a bit. "Let's be friends from now on, okay Naruto-kun?" Sarafal said softly. Naruto for a moment was still frozen, but smiled at what he heard. "Why yeah, let's be friends Sarafal-chan," Naruto said happily. "Well, you two seem to be getting along quite nicely," a voice said next to them. They both looked to see Sears-X standing there smirking. Naruto of course jerked away and scratched the back of his head, while Sarafal had a different reaction. "Sears-X-chan," she said in a whiny voice. Naruto-kun and I were having such a wonderful moment together. And as a result we're friends now," Sarafal said as she gave him a peace sign with stars glittered across it. Sears-X laughed at them both, seeing how nonchalant Sarafal was about it while Naruto still looked a bit embarrassed. After she was done, Sears-X looked at Naruto. "Naruto-kun, it's time we got briefed and ready. Falbium is in the other room," Sears-X said to him. Naruto nodded and got up from his chair and walked over to Sears-X. As he was about to leave though, he stopped and turned around and began to walk over to Sarafal. He smiled as he immediately hugged her, shocking Sarafal. "You're my third friend now." "Thank you Sarafal-chan," Naruto said with a smile. Sarafal herself couldn't help but slightly blush at the sentimental moment they were having. Who would have thought becoming a friend to this blonde boy was so meaningful to him? Sarafal giggled and patted his head. No problem Naruto-kun, she said. Naruto kept his smile as he let go of her and walked over to Sirzex, who he too had a smile on his face. As they began to walk away, Serafal couldn't help but look at the blonde's retreating figure. The way he smiled and the way his blue eyes shined when they talked. The innocence of it all could only make her smile. He's going to be quite handsome when he grows up, Serafal said to herself as she kept her smile. Briefing room. Naruto and Sirzex entered a room where they spotted Falbium looking at a map on a table. Once they entered, Falbium took notice of them both. Good, you're both here. I'll begin then, Falbium said as he began pointing to the map. As you can recall during the meeting, I said we are over here while the other faction is over here. He said while Naruto and Sirzex nodded. What I didn't tell you is that from here to here is at least 300 to 400 feet. As you can now see, this might take away depending on how fast you move. Falbium said. I see. That doesn't factor in if any traps or outposts have been set up in between either. Sirzex said. Yes, that is why I want you to avoid any fighting if you can. Get close enough to where you can observe and nothing more. If anything, this is more of a stealth mission. I predict they might be doing the same thing we are, so expect a scouting party as well. Falbium said to them. Naruto, who was just standing there, was silent. He was simply amazed at the planning and directing Falbium was doing while Sirzex was too putting in his input. This was a whole new experience to him as he had never been in war before. Seeing it was amazing to him. He was snapped out of his musings when Sirzex called to him. Naruto-kun, are you paying attention? Sirzex said. Naruto nodded. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just really amazed at the planning and thought that goes into all of this. He said. Sirzex merely chuckled. Yes, this is why we have Falbium here. He is the best tactician in the underworld. That and I have yet to see anyone else that can do what he can. Sirzex said. Naruto nodded. Falbium looked at Naruto. Naruto, I want you to follow Sirzex's lead. Listen to him whenever you can as he is strong as well. Understand? He said. Naruto nodded. Hi, he responded. You will leave in 10 minutes. And be careful, both of you, he said to them as he walked out of the room. Naruto and Sirzex were the only ones left in the room. Sirzex looked at Naruto and took note of his demeanor. Sirzex put a hand on his shoulder. Naruto looked up at Sirzex, who was smiling. This is what you have been training for, Naruto-kun. Don't lose confidence in yourself. I know what you're capable of. You'll do fine. I know it. I wouldn't have brought you otherwise. Sirzex said. Naruto merely smiled as he shook his head. Thank you, he said. Sirzex smiled and nodded. Let's go, he said as they walked out of the room. In the forest, Naruto and Sirzex had already left the manor and begun their mission towards the supposed HQ location of the rival faction. They both were running fast through the forest. To normal humans, they would have looked like blurs. Reaching out a few more feet, Sirzex stopped with Naruto behind him. Naruto-kun, do you sense them? Sirzex asked. Naruto slightly nodded. Sort of, Naruto said as he then channeled energy to his eyes, activating his Rinnegan. I can sure see them though, Naruto said in slight amazement at what he was seeing. Sirzex looked at Naruto to see he had activated his Rinnegan. What do you see, Naruto-kun? Sirzex asked curiously. Naruto said nothing for a moment as his eyes scanned the forest. I can see their energy. It's flowing through them so clearly, Naruto said as he took note of the many pathways the energies were coursing through. They looked like veins to him. Sirzex was surprised at what he heard. He hadn't ever heard of anyone being able to see energy. Amazing to think you could see their pure energy. What else can you see? Any traps? Sirzex asked. Naruto shook his head. Not that I see, he responded. You're counting 3 of them, correct? Sirzex asked. Yeah, I am. Naruto responded back. Good, let's go around them. They shouldn't be able to sense us if we go out far enough. Sirzex said to Naruto. Naruto nodded as he and Sirzex began to take a route around the outpost. After a few minutes, they had finally passed the outpost. They had began to slow down the pace as they came to a leisure-type speed. As they were getting closer to the alleged headquarters, Naruto had kept his eyes activated the whole time. He didn't know he could see other devils' energies. But then again, he was only training on wood dummies, but why wasn't he able to see Sirzex's energy when he was training with him? More questions began to arise in his brain. Sirzex-san, Naruto asked. Sirzex looked at him and smiled. Sirzex, Naruto-kun, how many times do I got to tell you that? Only Searsex, he said. Naruto looked back and nodded with a smile. Searsex, why is it? Naruto-kun, watch out, Searsex yelled. At an instant 5 weapons that looked scythes and spears came raining down on them. Searsex had moved out of the way. Naruto had also dodged accordingly as well. Although he ended up a bit further away from Searsex. There is at least 8 of them. Naruto yelled as he saw more bodies with energy coming towards them. Shit, Naruto-kun, Searsex said as more and more devils began to show up. Well, look who it is, a feminine voice said. Searsex took note of the voice and watched one person come forward from all the devils. His expression turned fierce as he identified who it was. She was a tall woman with a voluptuous figure. She had tan skin with long brown hair tied into a bun and blue-gray eyes. She wore a dress that was extremely low-cut and had a high slit on it which exposed a large portion of her chest. Kateria Leviathan, Searsex said. Kateria smirked at hearing her name. And here I thought I wasn't going to fight today. Especially Searsex Gremory of all people. Kateria said with a devious smile as she materialized a scythe-like weapon in her hand. Searsex looked to his side to see Naruto a good distance spaced from him. He turned back to look at Kateria. I hope you will be okay, Naruto-kun. No, I know he will be. This is the true test now. Searsex thought as he got into his fighting stance. With Naruto. Naruto looked in front of him to see a multitude of devils surround him at all angles. From what he can count there was at least 6 of them. So that means the other 2 must be with Searsex. Naruto thought as he looked to his side to find 2 devils plus a woman in front of Searsex. The women held a considerable amount of power from what he can feel. Not at Searsex level, but a very good amount. Leviathan-sama has the other one. So this one will be easy. Spoke one devil who held an axe. Naruto turned his head and began to examine his opponents. Their skin was a bit darker than from what he had seen. They also had on dark armor and they were taller than he was as well. Let's get boys. One devil yelled as his black wings came out and charged forward towards Naruto at a good speed. Naruto watched as the devil had used his wings to propel him forwards. He was surprised as he could clearly see how slow he was moving. As the devil neared and brought his axe up to swing down on him, Naruto leaned slightly to his right, letting it swing down past him and caught it by the handle. The devil who had swung at him looked at the boy with a surprised expression. Seeing this, Naruto took advantage of the situation and gave him an uppercut and sidekick to his chest, sending him flying towards a few devils. Naruto then backed up slightly and back-flipped over the ones behind him and jumped back, gaining a bit of space from them. He was finally able to see all of them. The devil who was sent flying stood back up with a furious expression on his face. What are you all looking at? Attack him, the devil yelled. Each devil unfurled their wings and charged forward with their weapons. Naruto stood still as he watched them all come at him. Naruto slowly brought his hand up, palm facing forward, and took a deep breath. He watched as they inched closer and closer. When they were finally within range to attack, Naruto uttered 2 words. Shinra Tensei, he said softly. The 6 devils that attacked him, or were close to, were momentarily suspended in the air. Suddenly they were violently jerked backwards by an unknown force. The force was so violent, many hit the surrounding trees and in the process broke their necks, while some fainted due to the extreme pain they were hit with. Naruto let a deep breath out as he looked at what he'd done. From where he stood and onward, the ground reflected the strength of his technique as a long crater-like shape was formed into the ground. Several of the brushes were blown away while some of the shorter trees looked like they were about to fall. So training really has paid off. Naruto muttered to himself with a smile. Naruto then turned his attention to Searsex to see him only fighting the woman now. As he was about to go and assist Searsex, something caught his eye. A light, a bright one at that. With his Rinnegan still activated, it got brighter as he began to walk towards it. For some reason he felt drawn to it, like he had to see what it was. It also felt very familiar to him, as if it was calling him to go there. As he walked forward, he was snapped out of his thoughts as Searsex and Kateria's blows were becoming more and more resound. Shaking his head and filing the mysterious light for later, he quickly made his way towards Searsex. With Searsex and Kateria at this point have been only jousting in hand-to-hand combat. Searsex wanted to keep it this way so he would not alert more devils from the opposing factions. As they slipped and dodged each other's punches, Sirzek's got the better amount of punches while Kateria held her own. Kateria, who threw the last punch, backed up and smirked. "This has been informing to say the least. How about we tested your real power?" Kateria said as she began to power up. Sirzek's eyes widened. This is what he was trying to avoid. But then he thought back to the first thing she said and what she had been doing this whole time. "You are the scouting party." So Falbium was right then. Sirzek said as the last part was to himself. Kateria kept her smirk as she looked at him. "Yes, we predicted the anti-Satan faction would send a scouting party as well, but like I said, we didn't predict was Sirzek's Gremory himself would be in it," she said. "But since you're already here, why don't we see how strong you are?" Kateria as she began to power up. Naruto finally appeared next to Sirzek's. Sirzek's turned his head and smiled as he saw Naruto unharmed. "I'm glad you're not hurt, Naruto-kun," he said. Naruto smiled. "Yeah, training with you really helped," he said. Sirzek's nodded and looked towards Kateria. "Naruto-kun, in a few moments, many of the devils from the Satan faction are going to appear. As of now, we have failed this mission," Sirzek said. Naruto looked towards Kateria and began to see multiple energies racing towards where they were from behind her. "So what are we going to do?" Naruto asked. Sirzek smiled. "You are going to head back to headquarters while I buy you time," Sirzek said. Naruto frowned at what he heard. "But I want to fight too," Naruto said as he looked at Sirzek. Sirzek looked at Naruto carefully and smiled. "Naruto-kun, there is simply going to be too much of them. You can't fight hand to hand with all of them, and the only move you know is Shinra Tensei," Sirzek told him. Naruto sighed as what Sirzek admitted was true. But he wasn't giving up. He then looked back at Sirzek with a determined look on his face. "Then I will keep firing Shinra Tenseis until I can't anymore," he said to Sirzek. Sirzek's eyes slightly widened but went back to normal as he could only smile yet again. He may have grown up slightly, but his thought process is still a bit childish at times. Sirzek thought to himself, "I want to fight here. This is how I can become strong to protect Akeno-chan, Rias-chan and the Gremory clan," Naruto said strongly to Sirzek. Before he could respond, Sirzek turned his attention forward. Behind and aside Kateria were many devils. From what he can sense, they ranged from low-class to middle-class devils. He looked back to Naruto to see he still had that determined expression. He smiled as he ruffled his hair. "Alright, Naruto-kun, but please try and not to get hurt too badly. Ria-tan and Akeno-chan would beat me till I'm black and blue," he said. Naruto smiled as he nodded. Sirzek looked back at Kateria and smirked as he too began to power up, easily matching Kateria's power. Kateria's eyes slightly widened at how effortlessly he was able to match her power. Sirzek's energy was surrounding him with the color as red as his hair, and maybe even darker. Holding his hand up, 3 small black spheres started to form. He looked towards Naruto to see his pupils moving a bit erratically. "How many do you see, Naruto?" Sirzek said, catching on to what he was doing. "At least 80 of them," said Naruto a bit nervously. Sirzek smirked. "Well, why don't we cut that number in half?" Sirzek said as he waved his arm forward, sending the small black orbs towards the other devils. "Ruin of the extinct," he muttered as he watched the small orbs move at a high speed. Boom! The 3 orbs caused a massive explosion in different areas. Where some of the devils were standing were large craters. It seemed like they had just simply vanished. Naruto's jaw simply dropped at what he saw. He of course had never seen Sirzek's power since he didn't use it all in their training. But this was something amazing. Kateria, who saw this, gritted her teeth. "The power of destruction," she muttered. She looked over her shoulder to the other devils who were shocked at what they saw as well. "Get moving," she yelled. They all snapped out of their musings as they focused on the person in front of them. They all charged at Sirzek. But what they saw was a young blonde boy step in front of him holding his hand up. "Shinra Tensei," he whispered. The devils that were heading forward were propelled back instantly, some of them hitting the trees and ground hard. But Naruto's eyes caught the next wave that came from behind the first group that charged. Naruto leaned to the side and began to dodge the swings of some of the spears and scythes the devils were trying to hit him with. The ones who didn't follow Naruto attacked Sirzek. Sirzek unfurled his wings and flew straight up and summoned 3 little black orbs again. With a flick of his hand he sent it below him, effectively destroying all the devils that were down there, earning him screams of pain as they vanished. Kateria, who had saw this, had enough and was going to jump in. But she thought of something. What was most interesting her was the little blonde boy who seemingly destroyed a good amount of devils but muttering one word. He seemed to be close to Circex as well by the way he ruffled his hair a moment ago. Her mouth turned into a smirk as she too let out her wings and launched herself forward, not at Circex, but Naruto. After Circex destroyed some of the devils below him, more had just seemed to follow. Him and a few other devils were currently in the air attacking each other. Circex, who had just dodged a kick, looked towards Kateria as he saw her begin to move. Following where she was going, his eyes widened. "Naruto!" he yelled as he kicked an incoming devil in the face as more and more kept coming at him. Naruto, who had begun to systematically destroy the devils in front of him with hand-to-hand combat, heard Circex yell his name. Looking towards him, he felt a powerful energy source coming towards him. Turning his head, he saw the girl Circex was fighting earlier making her way towards him. In a second she reached him and swung her scythe-like weapon at him. Naruto barely dodged it as he jumped back, letting the women hit the ground, creating a crater. Kateria flew from the crater and landed in front of him with a smirk. "I wonder what such a young and handsome boy such as yourself is doing on a battlefield," Kateria said. Naruto looked at her and said nothing. Kateria looked closely as she now noticed his eyes. They were strangely purple with black rings. She narrowed her eyes as she hadn't seen anything like that before, well, at least to her memory. This was something she was going to have to report later. "Tell me, why are your eyes like that?" she asked curiously. Naruto slightly smiled. "They were a gift," he said cryptically. Kateria's eyebrows rose. "A gift, huh? Well, they won't be enough to stop me from killing you," she said as she lunged forward. Naruto rose his hand up to release his famed technique, but Kateria saw this, remembered what it was, and smirked as she quickly cut the straight angle, making a new one, appearing on his side. Naruto didn't have time to counter as he rose his arms up at the last second to block the attack. Kateria landed on the ground and gave him a side kick to his face, then quickly spun around with her scythe and slashed horizontally, effectively cutting him through his cloak. Naruto grunted as he jumped back to gain space from Kateria. Kateria smirked as she saw blood from his cloak. "That little move is not going to work on me, little boy," she said tauntingly. Kateria began to move again as she darted forward and following the same tactic, as she was going cut her angle in turn of a new one. Naruto saw this and smirked slightly and turned his body, seeing her coming forward. As she cut the angle, Naruto held his palm up, but instead of holding it in front of her, he moved it towards the left. When Kateria saw him raise his hand, she smirked. "Foolish little boy," she yelled as she cut her direction a second time, just like he predicted. However, her smile fell as she saw his hand pointed at the direction she had already cut to. "Shinra Tensei," he said as he put a little more energy into this one, effectively hitting Kateria, sending her flying backwards. Although at this time, Naruto was nearing his limit as he dropped to one knee. From firing Shinra Tensei's to fighting hand-to-hand combat and evading enemies, this was really starting to take a toll on him. As for Kateria, her body moved in an erratic motion through the air, but she straightened herself out with her wings, stopping her from flying back any further. She landed on the ground and wiped her mouth. "To think this little boy made me bleed," Kateria said to herself as she wiped the blood on her clothes. As she was about to lunge toward Naruto again, two devils were lunged towards her. She jumped back as the two bodies hit the ground, creating a deep crater. She looked from the bodies to Naruto to see Circex near the blonde. Circex, who was close to defeating the last of the devils who attacked him, saw Naruto take a knee after releasing his Shinra Tensei. Circex was slightly surprised he was able to hold his own and even inflict slight injury on Kateria. Looking back at the last two devils, he quickly moved forward and nailed one with a right hand and the other with an uppercut. Grabbing them by their armor, Circex chucked them towards Kateria while Circex flew towards Naruto. Landing besides him, Naruto had taken a knee as he was breathing heavily. "Naruto-kun," he said as he put a hand on his shoulder. Naruto looked to his side and smiled as his Rinnegan deactivated, showing his regular blue eyes. "Did I do good?" Naruto asked through his ragged breath. Circex smiled at him. "You did very good," he said with pride. Naruto kept his smile as his eyes closed. "Good," he whispered as he fell forward from exhaustion. Sirzex caught him before he could hit the ground. He picked him up as he threw Naruto over his shoulder. He turned around to leave, but a voice halted any of his further movements. "We're not done here, Gremory," Kateria said. Sirzex looked back and summoned one black orb. It was bigger than the previous ones he had used. "I believe we are," he said in a monotone voice as he flung it towards Kateria. Her eyes widened as she saw the size of it this time. "Shit," she muttered as she turned around to avoid the explosion. Sirzex said nothing as he flapped his wings off and flew towards headquarters. Boom! Kateria nearly dodged the explosion as she landed on a tree trunk. She looked at the explosion site to see it be bigger than any of the previous ones he had done. She huffed in annoyance as she turned around to fly back. "This won't be the last time we see each other, Gremory," she said as she flew off. Off towards the distance, a man walked out from the shadows that were provided from the trees. He smiled as he looked off towards the direction Sirzex left in. So it would seem the world might be coming to an end. The man said as he turned around, walking deeper into the forest. Sirzex finally made it as gently landed near the manor as he carried Naruto into his arms. When he looked up he saw the sights of Seraphal, Ajuka and Falbium in the front. Seraphal was the first to see Sirzex, she was also the first to see Naruto in his arms. "Naruto-kun," she said as she ran over to Sirzex. This caught Ajuka and Falbium's attention as well as they began to walk towards him. Seraphal was the first to reach him as she looked at Naruto. "Sirzex-chan, what happened to Naruto-kun?" Seraphal asked a bit worriedly. Sirzex was a bit surprised at the affectionate she used in his name. He didn't think Seraphal would be this quick to call someone so affectionately as she always referred to everyone as Chan. Sirzex only smiled. "Naruto-kun is fine," he said to her. "Yes, what did happen? You guys look like you got into a fight." "A big one," Ajuka said to Sirzex as he took note of his dirty and slightly ripped clothes. "Let me bring Naruto-kun inside and I'll explain everything," Sirzex said as they all nodded and went inside. "So you encountered Kateria Leviathan, huh?" Falbium asked as he, Sirzex and Ajuka sat in the briefing room. Sirzex nodded as he crossed his legs. "Yes, it seems she was a part of the scouting party on her way here," Sirzex said. Falbium nodded. "So I was correct. I didn't think she would be in there though," he said. Sirzex laughed slightly. "Yes, she said the same thing about Naruto-kun and I," he said. "So I'm assuming you weren't able to confirm the numbers?" Falbium asked. Sirzex merely nodded. "Yes, that is true. Although we did find out they hold large numbers if their reinforcements were anything to go by. 80 to 90 devils is a very seemingly big number for just backup." Sirzex ended. Both Falbium and Ajuka nodded. "Very well. We might have to do this mission again at a later time. I want to be sure. But tomorrow we start to set up our defenses, watch guards and battlefield plans," Falbium said. "Sirzex, how did Naruto do?" Ajuka spoke curiously. Falbium looked at Sirzex as he too was curious. Sirzex could only smile as he looked at them. "Well, he was able to injure Kateria for one," he said, making their eyes widen. "He managed to hurt an ultimate class devil?" Ajuka asked, very surprised. "She may be the descendant of the original Leviathan, but she isn't an ultimate classed one." "Not yet at least," Falbium interrupted. "Although she is still very dangerous." "Why did you let him fight such an opponent?" Falbium asked Sirzex. Sirzex scratched his head sheepishly. "Well, to be honest, she kind of caught me off guard. I didn't want to go into my true form either. I haven't mastered it completely yet. Although I am close to," Sirzex said. All three were silent at what they heard from him. Sirzex smiled yet again as he remembered the battle. "He also managed to kill and defeat most of the devils there after I reduced the number in half," Sirzex said with a pride. Falbium smiled slightly. "For someone so young he has power," he said. "Yeah, most people can't do what he did. Not even some of the older devils. If he keeps this up, he might end getting promoted," Ajuka said as he scratched his chin. "That's the thing, Naruto has yet to truly learn what his power can really do. And that is what is frightening. I believe he intends to learn more about it within these few coming years. And I know he will succeed," Sirzex said as he closed his eyes in a smile. "He might soon take your place as one of the best devils here, Sirzex," Ajuka said as he laughed while both Sirzex and Falbium joined in on the laughter. "With Naruto, Naruto was now currently laying down in the medical room they had set up in the manor. Before talking with Falbium and Ajuka, Sirzex made sure he was in here first. After taking off his cloak and cleaning him and his wound up, he was laid down in one of the many beds in the room. There was also one person in there with him, watching him sleep. It was Seraphal. She was sitting in a chair next to his bed examining his features. She couldn't help but feel compelled to stay with him. From that moment she mentioned her as his friend. A happy feeling arose from it within her whenever she thought about it. She felt as his new friend. She should try and take care of him in any way. She smiled as she saw his serene features. She leaned over and ran her hand across his hair in an affectionate manner. She smiled as he saw his facial features relax even more at her touch. She continued stroking his hair for a few minutes before a voice interrupted her. "You seem to be enjoying that," said a voice behind her. She was so into caressing his hair that she didn't even notice anyone behind her. She quickly pulled her hand back and looked back. Sirzex couldn't help but laugh slightly seeing the slight blush on her face. "Why don't you get some sleep? We have many things to do tomorrow." "He will be fine here," Sirzex said. Seraphal sighed as she nodded knowing what he said was true. As Sirzex turned around and walked out the room, Seraphal was about to follow until she turned back around. She made her way towards Naruto and stood at his bedside. She slowly leaned down and kissed his forehead for the second time. "I'll see you tomorrow, Naruto-kun," she whispered, followed by smiling seeing how Naruto's mouth formed into a smile as well. She turned around and happily skipped out of the room, not aware this would be the last time she would see him for a few years. A few hours later, a certain blonde boy groaned. Naruto groaned as he opened his eyes. The first sight he was greeted to was a white ceiling. Propping himself on his elbows, he looked around to see many beds. Looking down he saw that he was still in his same clothes minus his cloak. He then got up from his bed slowly and looked around. "So we're back at headquarters." "Good," Naruto said with a smile. He took another step but slightly winced. He looked down to see part of his stomach wrapped in cloth. Taking a few deep breaths he looked around to see his cloak hung on a coat rack across the room. Walking towards it, he grabbed it and put it over him. He made his way back to the bed and sighed. He thought back to that light he saw along with the feeling he felt when he saw it. For some reason he felt as if he needed to check out what he was. Like he was meant to. Why was he feeling this way? He felt somewhat anxious and impatient to really know what it was. Call it the kid in him that was curious and wanted to explore. Quickly getting up from the bed, he decided to go out and check out to sat his curiosity. Slowly looking towards the door, he saw that the lights were on but no one was around. Walking to the window, he quietly opened it and jumped out. Landing softly, he began to run at a fast pace towards the forest. In the forest, after about 10 minutes of running, Naruto came to the place where he and Sirzex had fought. Naruto, who had fainted after the battle, could really now look at the terrain the battle made. There were many small to medium-sized craters. Most likely from Sirzex, Naruto thought as he looked at the craters. As he walked around taking in the view of mass debris, broken trees and altered terrain, he stopped in the middle of the forest. Closing his eyes, he activated his Rinnegan and began to look around. He began to trek forward in search of this light, wanting to find where it came from. Little did he know, he was venturing deeper and deeper into the forest. After a few minutes he came to another clearing within the forest. He looked behind him to see rows after rows of trees. "Crap, I don't think I know where I am anymore," Naruto said as he looked around hoping to see something familiar. As he was looking around, he spotted something. It was the light he had seen before. "There is it," he mentally yelled. As he was about to walk over to it, the light began to move. It also started to become bigger. For a moment, Naruto paused at the phenomenon. Suddenly the light instantaneously appeared in front of him. For Naruto, the light was too bright as he deactivated his Rinnegan and backed up as he closed his eyes in slight pain. He then wiped his eyes slightly to try and get rid of the pain. When he opened them, he saw it. He looked at the light without his Rinnegan this time. It took the shape of a sphere as it floated up and down. It slowly floated towards his face, only stopping a few inches from it. To Naruto it seemed like as if it was examining him in a way. Suddenly the orb moved back slightly, and began to move away from him. "Wait!" Naruto yelled as he began to follow the orb through the large forest. For about 10 minutes, Naruto had kept up with the orb's pace. Naruto was only focusing on the orb and failed to notice part of a root that was sticking up from the ground. As a result, Naruto single-handedly tripped over it. OMFPH. He grunted as he hit the ground and rolled a bit. Sighing as he laid on the ground, he slowly made his way to his feet and began to dust himself off. I stand corrected, Sirzek's training hasn't paid off yet. He said to himself, a bit frustrated he didn't see something as simple as a root. When he looked at his surroundings though, there was one thing that couldn't miss his eye. He saw what looked like to be a shrine. It looked old in his eyes. The greenery from the forest had wrapped around the building and the color of the blocks were already faded as well. There were also 2 flights of stairs that led up to the top. What caught Naruto's eyes was the big statue at the top of it. Interested, he began to walk up the flight of stairs. As he eventually reached the top, he stopped in front of the statue. He was in awe at what he saw. The statue was carved out of stone. On it was a massive dragon-like creature and next to is what looked like to be man fighting it. What shocked him even more was the man had wings. Taking a few steps forward, he saw an opening to the shrine. As Naruto went to further inspect, he heard whistling coming towards him. On instinct he jumped back. The whistling sound hit the ground in a clank where his feet would have been. Naruto saw the supposed weapon as some type of knife sticking out, as it was impaled in the ground. Next to it, appeared an old man. He was a short man, shorter than Naruto was, with white hair and a Fu Manchu-like mustache matching his hair color. He looked to be wearing a traditional black kung fu uniform that was collared. The old man who had appeared next to the weapon said nothing as he lunged forward, engaging Naruto in hand-to-hand. Naruto, who was still surprised at the person who had attacked him, barely dodged the old man's attack. As Naruto dodged his kick, the old man bent his knees and spun around, giving him a back kick to his chest, sending Naruto tumbling back a bit. Naruto grunted as he jumped back. He winced as he felt the cut on his chest from Kateria hurt. It must have been where the old man kicked him. He looked at the old man who now took an upright stance with his arms crossed. "Why the hell did you attack me and who hell are you?" Naruto asked the man calmly in front of him. The old man smiled as he relaxed his posture and stroked his mustache. "I am the guardian of this shrine. Only those who wield the eyes of God may pass through. Although I could ask you the same question, young man," the old man said to him. Naruto's eyes widened at what he heard the old man say. The eyes of God. He couldn't mean. Naruto closed his eyes and took a deep breath in. He slowly opened them to look at the old man. The old man's eyes widened as he saw the purple ripples in the young man's eyes. The old man smiled. "So you have finally arrived. Come, young one, there is much we must talk about," the old man said as he turned around and walked forward. "Hey, wait, what do you mean we have much to talk about?" Naruto yelled as he ran to catch up to him. The old man looked over his shoulder and smiled. "We have to prepare you for the apocalypse," he said. "What?" The old man said nothing as he kept his pace walking into the shrine. "Old man, did you just hear me? What do you mean apocalypse?" Naruto asked frantically. The old man looked back with a smile. "Apocalypse, you know, end of the world?" the old man said nonchalantly. "All of your questions will be answered, but first," the old man said as he turned around to look at the entrance of the shrine. He put up one hand and formed a sign. Megan. Kokoni Arizu no Jutsu, demonic illusion, false surroundings technique, he said as the entrance itself began to camouflage with the forest itself. Naruto for a moment was stunned at what he just did, but it was then something else caught his eye. The old man then stood there as he held his hand out as if he was waiting for something. An orb that looked very familiar to Naruto landed in his hand and dissipated. "What did you just do? Wait, that orb was yours? So then that means that light I saw during my fight was you?" Naruto said, stunned as he did not expect that at all. The old man smiled at him. "Yes, that orb is a means to keep an eye on the surrounding area of this shrine. It is one of my special abilities," the old man replied. "Now, do not worry over such trivial things, young one. In time you will learn that technique you saw and more. After all, you are the inheritor. Now just follow me," the old man said as he turned into another hallway-like path within the shrine. Naruto said nothing as he just continued to follow the old man. Naruto stood behind him though, slightly on guard. He did attack him, but then again he seemed to know about his Rinnegan. and this could be a very good chance to learn more about it. The old man who was silently walking looked back to see Naruto slightly tensed. He let a small chuckle. "There is no need to worry, young one. I wouldn't dare of hurting our savior," the old man said. Naruto just slightly relaxed at hearing this. "Okay, can you please start telling me what's going on? Apocalypse? Savior? And how do you know of my eyes?" Naruto asked. The old man suddenly stopped, as did Naruto. He came face to face a wall. Looking towards his right, he reached out and pulled what looked like to be a lever that had the appearance of a small torch lighting the path they walked on. He stepped back as the wall in front of him began to shake and move. It caved in, followed by moving to the side. The old man stepped in and looked towards Naruto, gesturing him to come in. Naruto looked at him and slowly began to walk in. When he entered, his eyes couldn't help but marvel at the room. The room was gigantic. In the center was a big rectangular space. There were lines that separated it from the ground they were standing on. To Naruto, it looked like a big training field. And he assumed he was right if the training dummies and weapons were anything to go by. There was also many shelves which held books and what looked like to be parchment. Off on the other side, from what he could see, were tables and a few beds along with many fruits and other various foods. "What is this place?" Naruto said, looking around in amazement. The old man laughed slightly. "This is the place where you will spend a few years training your Rinnegan," the old man said. Naruto suddenly glared at him as he activated his Rinnegan and looked at him. "I've had enough of this cryptic-like answers, old man. Now tell me what you know of the Rinnegan and who you really are," Naruto demanded. The old man smiled at Naruto. "Very well, let me start off by telling you what this shrine is," the old man said. This shrine was said to have been built long ago by the Uzumaki clan. This shrine only held one purpose: to educate and prepare the chosen one for the end of the world, the old man said. "You see," he said as he walked over to a shelf that was near them and grabbed a scroll and tossed it over to Naruto. This scroll was kept by the Uzumakis for a long time. It's our highest and most valued artifact we have. It foretells a prophecy, a time where one will be gifted with the eyes God once had to help protect this world. A great evil is coming, young one, the old man said to him. Naruto, who was listening, didn't say anything as he was reading the scroll as well. One particular part caught his attention though. Once the great evil has been unlocked to roam the world once again, neither heaven, earth or hell will survive its sinful wrath. Only the one who has unlocked the holy eyes of God will be able to combat the evil that once plagued this world. By truly discovering the power of the eyes will only then allow the chosen one to defeat that evil once more. Naruto, who had read that, looked up at the old man. "What exactly is this evil?" Naruto asked curiously. The old man sighed. "That I do not know, young one. But the best we can do is to prepare." "We'll prepare you, as you are the only hope of stopping it," the old man said to him. Naruto sighed as he rolled up the scroll. This was starting to become a little bit too much to take in. After a few minutes of silence, he looked up towards the old man. "And who are you exactly? You haven't told me your name," Naruto asked. "My name is Hisao Uzumaki," the now identified Hisao said. Naruto's eyes widened. "You're an Uzumaki too?" he practically yelled. Hisao laughed at the boy. "Yes, I am. I was assigned to one thing and one thing only. It is my sole duty to protect this temple and wait for the chosen one. I knew one day you would come," Hisao said to Naruto. "You don't look that old though. I mean, you do look like an old man, but not that seriously old," Naruto said. Hisao only laughed. "Have you forgotten but the Uzumaki's long longevity, my boy?" he said with a smile. Naruto's mouth formed into "oh," and scratched his sheepishly in embarrassment. After though, Naruto looked at the floor in contemplation. It seemed what Lord Gremory told him the first time about his eyes were true after all. Why did it feel like he had so much pressure on him? "Oh wait, I know. I mean, I only have to save the world from some type of evil I don't even know of. No biggie," Naruto thought to himself. Hisao, who saw this, slowly walked his way over to Naruto. He gently put a hand on his shoulder that broke Naruto's thoughts. "Like I said, my duty was to stay in this temple to wait for you. I also had another duty. Do you know what that is?" Hisao asked. Naruto shook his head. "I am also here to teach you more about your Rinnegan. Before I left Uzumaki territory, I was blessed to learn a bit more of the Rinnegan. Albeit basic things, but enough to help," Hisao said as he walked over to another shelf and looked back at Naruto. There are a few techniques here that you are supposed to learn for your Rinnegan. As you know, you have the ability to control multiple elements. Correct? Hisao said. Naruto merely nodded. Lucky for you, there are a few scrolls here that I can help you with that will get you started on your feet, along with some books here about the Rinnegan techniques itself. Hisao said. Wait, Hisao-san. Why didn't the clan just store all the scrolls here? You told me this is where I would be learning everything about the Rinnegan. Naruto asked. I didn't say everything. I said enough to get you started and familiar on how your abilities work. The majority of the scrolls are back in Uzumaki territory. In plus, no one would be able to read it without your eyes. Hisao said. Naruto slowly nodded his head in understanding. I was planning on heading back there after this war is done anyways. Naruto said to him. It was then Naruto realized he still had a war to fight. Wait, I have a war to fight in. Naruto yelled at Hisao. Hisao only laughed. Yes, that is true, but from what I have seen, you are not ready yet, young one. This is why you are here. You are not only to learn about your Rinnegan, but you are also here to increase your levels to where you are more than battle ready. I promise by the time we are done, no part of your fighting will lack anything. But of course you will have to train more after this. Hisao said to him. So I will become stronger? Become stronger than I am now? Strong enough to take on high-class devils? Naruto asked. Hisao nodded as he stroked his facial hair. Yes, I promise. The wait may be long, but it will be worth it when you come out of here. So what do you say? Shall we get started? Hisao asked, not wanting to waste any more time than what was needed. Naruto looked at him and thought about it. But what about Searsex? I don't want to worry him about me and just leave him to fight this war. Naruto said. Hisao only laughed. If you haven't noticed by now, Searsex is very strong. I'm sure you will do fine. He also may be worried, but you came here by choice, young one. You also know how serious your responsibilities are now. Hisao said. He was right, and if today were anything to go by, he still needed training. He didn't really know how Searsex or his new friend Serafal was going to feel. But this is something he had to do. He had these special eyes for a reason. And that reason was to get stronger to protect the world from evil. It also meant protecting Rias and Akeno and the Gremory clan. He was also right about leaving. He just felt bad for worrying Searsex after all that he had done for him. But this was something he had to do. He only hoped Searsex would survive so he can see him in a few years. Who am I kidding? He's a very high-class devil as it is. But just wait for me, Searsex. I'll show you how strong I can really become. Naruto thought. It was then Naruto looked at Hisao with a determined look, his Rinnegan sharp as ever. Let's do it, Naruto said to him. Hisao nodded happily in agreement. Good, now let's get started. Naruto. My name is Naruto, Naruto said to Hisao. Hisao smiled. Let us begin, Naruto. Hisao said as he went to grab a few scrolls. So how was it, everyone? Was that worth the long-ass wait I put you all through? Winking face. Ha ha ha. But you know, drop a review, favorite or follow it if you haven't already, my beautiful readers. And remember, the poll is new. So go and vote. Till next time, the Yellow Flash. Next time. So where is Rias Senpai anyways? Issei asked Kiba. Kiba looked at him and smiled as they continued to walk through Kuo. She is in the occult research room. It is where we are headed right now. Kiba said. Issei nodded as he was excited to see Rias again. And this is a club we are going to? What type of club is it and how come I've never heard of it? Issei asked. Kiba only smiled at his questions. Rias Senpai will explain more about it once we get there. Kiba said. Issei just nodded with a smile. If there was one girl he always dreamed about, it had to be Rias. He had always dreamed of Rias's voluptuous body, more accurately her S. I wonder if Rias Senpai might let me touch the marvelous S just once. Issei thought as he began to chuckle perversely and bleed from the nose at the same time. Excuse me, a voice said, garnering Issei and Kiba's attention. They both looked back to see a tall blonde, with blue eyes and spiky blonde hair, wearing a nice suit that was gray in color. It seemed to fit him nicely as it showed off his muscles and if the ogling girls off to the side were anything to go by. Yes? Kiba asked politely, not sure if he had seen this man before. I couldn't happen to overhear you talk about someone named Rias. Would this happen to be Rias Gremory? The blonde man asked. Kiba merely nodded. The blonde smiled. I'm actually an old friend, I was kind of hoping to see her. Do you know if Akeno Himejima is with her as well? The blonde man asked. Kiba smiled but inside was mentally looking at him suspiciously. He had to be devil from the way his energy felt. But that was the weird thing. He felt such indescribable power being held back from him. Who exactly was this guy and how did he know Rias and Akano? If anything he had to keep his guard up just in case. Kiba-senpai? Issei said, getting his attention. Kiba snapped out of his thoughts and smiled as he looked at the blonde man. Ah yes, you can tag along if you like. We were just on our way to meet both of them, Kiba said. The blonde nodded happily with a smile as he walked besides them. I didn't happen to get your name by the way, Kiba said to the blonde. The blonde looked at him and smiled as he extended his hand out. Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki. That's all for now. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments.